Ready?
Okay.
I think you need to mute one of the cameras.
It's the YouTube. Hopefully.
No, I think the Zoom went on. You gotta mute the computer itself.
Sorry, everybody.
Still don't see the.
It's the. Any better? No.
What's going on?
Hello? Let's try that again. All righty. There we go. Thank you for your patience with our technical difficulties.
Still don't see the.
All right, well, I'll get it to you in a second. Just gonna put it on speaker view. There we go. All right. I think the mayor has snapped up.
Well, we go through the procedure of the meeting.
Yeah. Roll.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you everyone for attending the Village of New Paltz Planning Board meeting of August 2nd, 2022. We have some administrative business tonight, public comments, public hearing. There will be no public hearings held tonight. And we have application reviews this evening to go through. And yeah, so that's pretty much what we have going on this evening. So with that in mind, we're going to open the meeting here with the approval of the minutes from the 7/19/2022 meeting. Did everyone get a chance and opportunity to read those minutes?
Yes.
And so may I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
May I get a second?
Well, I cannot vote on this since I was not
We
present,
can
but
have Zach on yours.
Zach?
oh, I was just saying I can't vote on this since I wasn't present at the meeting, but
Okay. So who else do we have? Do we have Rachel here? Rachel?
Rachel?
Okay, we're going to postpone that for the moment, come back to it a little bit later. Next, we have the updates from our village board, Upshur County Planning Board, or Environmental Planning Board. William Murray, are you here?
I am. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for attending. No real updates from the village. And the county planning board met. I think we've met since the last time. So our next meeting is tomorrow night. So no real updates.
Very good. All right, so we're going to move on to the public comments. I need a motion to open the public comments.
So moved.
Second,
seconded.
all in favor?
Aye.
But if
Aye.
it's not a public hearing, you don't need a motion for that.
Very good, then we'll just open the public hearing. Autumn, do you have anybody here to speak at the public comments?
The mayor was here to speak.
So we have Mayor Tim who would like to speak, so please, if you would, go right ahead.
Hi, can you guys hear me? This is Tim Rogers. So I wanted to make a public comment as both the mayor and a resident on two different topics. So number one, our village board has been talking for some time about how important it is to recognize the various volunteers who serve on our boards and commissions. So I'm here tonight to publicly thank Rich Sudo, Zach Bielecki, Tom Peterson, Rachel Gotka, and Chair John Litton. You guys do incredibly important work. I know that you take your responsibility seriously. Sometimes you disagree amongst yourselves. Sometimes the community disagrees with you, but you really care about making the right decisions and understanding the code and doing things that you think make the most sense for our community. So it's often a thankless job. So I just wanted to take a little time to say thank you. It's greatly appreciative. I thank you as a community member and as an elected official. You definitely help me sleep more easily at night, knowing that you guys are, taking your review of land use applications seriously, and your review of our village code seriously. It's really valuable and greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And number two, I just wanted to share with you that, and you probably saw at the village board meeting last weekend, we moved a resolution that regarded providing a waiver for the Mannheim Muse project. They want to construct, you guys are very well aware of this because it's on your desk as well. You're going to be responsible for all the other issues regarding the approval of this project, but we felt it made sense as a village board to go ahead and streamline the process a little bit, because it's the spirit of our affordable housing law, which was authored by the village board, included a density bonus, as well as a special stipulation to provide a haircut to the recreation fees for affordable housing units. So in our resolution, the project would be eligible for a haircut of 50% for the recreation fees due, and that is because it is an affordable housing complex, and that's all codified in our village code. and I know that I'm preaching to the choir. I'm a huge proponent of, any decision that the village board makes or the planning board makes. We hang our hat on words that are codified. So anytime you're looking at any application, any new subdivision, any project that involves adding new units, the only interpretation is the interpretation that's written in our code, and there cannot be special stipulations. I mean, I would love to not pay the parking tickets that I get periodically. I would love to not pay water bills or property taxes that I have to pay, but that's part of the social contract. Like we have rules, we have requirements as far as money that's due, as residents of this community, and it's important that we follow the existing rules. So I just wanted to share with you the deliberations that the village board was involved in, the resolution that we passed last week as it relates to that affordable housing complex. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes, sir.
Here.
Please.
Thank you. Hi, I'm John Alessi. I wasn't come tonight, but I saw the mayor's Facebook, so I want to comment on that. But also, I was going to leave the vape shop issue alone. I believe I heard comments before the meeting began about not being allowed to not give a approval just because you don't know who the proposed tenant of the vape shop is. I assume that's what the conversation was. I just note this is a special use application. It's not as a right application. And I still haven't kind of gotten from the application materials I've seen, I've gotten no explanation how this is not just a giant tax fraud scheme to steal a bunch of village tax money by selling vape cartridges for the 5 or 6 months where that business will be viable still, as it is at every vape shop in the state right now. As I've said before, legitimate vape shops, they're not a profitable business. They're not a viable business. They cannot survive right now in New York State without selling illegal THC cannabis vape cartridges or cannabis flower. That's what they're doing. It is my assumption that's what the purpose of this business is, but I'll leave the board to it. I'll just say it is a special permit. You do get to hold them to a higher standard than just switching from one permitted use to another permitted use. On the other issue, I was a little confused by the mayor's post to Facebook because he didn't identify which applicant tonight. He said it doesn't want to contribute to the community. I thought that was a weird thing to be saying. I don't know the applicant. I assume it's the Discovery Institute. I assume it's the project on Plains Road that doesn't have a set aside on the site plan. There's no talk about the rec fee there. Look, to me, reading it, it's not clear that the rec fees, apply to non-vacant lands that has buildings on it that's being subdivided, unlike the used one with this new development. The rec fees are supposed to be to accommodate the new people in the subdivision, which that doesn't look like what this is. But you know what, honestly, I would say this. I'm not going to butter you up like the mayor did. Ask the lawyers, please ask our own lawyers. The mayor's not your lawyer, I'm not your lawyer. Please ask the lawyers what the village code says and what the planning board is supposed to do here, because honestly, whether or not the rec fee situation applies to subdividing non-vacant land, again, I don't know these people. I've never met them. I've never done anybody to discover this. All I know is they're trying to subdivide 2 occupied pieces. And I saw the mayor's post, which was like, hey, we don't want reservations of land, we want money, and that's our policy. And kind of like, smearing these applicants as bad neighbors because they don't want to contribute to our community. And I just think that's very unfair. I think it's inappropriate for the mayor to be doing this because actually the law of the village and of the state says that we do want reservations of land first and foremost. And in fact, that's the process by default says that you can have a reservation of land. And it's only if the planning board decides that actually we can't fit a park, we can't fit the open land we need, it doesn't work to have that on this plat, then the planning board independently can make a decision that because of that, we can charge this fee. That's what state law says the village can do. What the mayor is kind of saying is, we want the money in all circumstances, and everyone should know that, and the planning board should know that, and so you should just charge the fee to everybody. Even if they put on there, here's a reservation of land that we're on. And I'm not sure, in fact, I'm pretty sure that's not code. I'm pretty sure if you read the village code, what it says is that if they put it on there, even if the village board doesn't want to accept it as a park, That's the end of it. And there is no fee if the board doesn't make its independent decision that on the merits, this spot doesn't work for a park in this plot. And all I'm trying to say is everyone in this community has a right to the law being enforced as the law is written and not as any one of the people involved in it would like it to be. And this seems to be a case where the mayor wants to speak that everyone's going to pay the fee. We're not going to do reservations of land anymore. And it's kind of selfish for people to suggest that, which is kind of, if I got the wrong impression, that was the impression I got from the Facebook post. When in fact, what the law says is we presume we do the reservation of land and the fee in lieu is an exception only if this independent board decides it on the merits of the project, not because the village wants money as policy. So I just thought that was unfair and inappropriate. I'd ask the board to talk with lawyers separately and to not, be influenced by the mayor's view of how it should be. All right, thanks.
Thank you. First off, I don't go on Facebook, except in the most rare occasions to check on family matters. So I have no idea of what was written or its intention. As far as the Discovery Institute is concerned, we are in the very initial stages of working through their application after a lengthy period of details that needed to be created and corrected. And so we aren't even to the point of talking about rec fees or any of that nature. And finally, I can appreciate your belief that the individuals will be engaged in a business that is not what they say. Let's leave it at that. I have no validation that is indeed the intention or that is going to be the activity. After checking both with our attorney and privately on their businesses and where they are and what they're doing, I, along with other board members, have felt comfortable in allowing them to continue along this process. But we do appreciate your comments and thank you for showing up for that. So now we're going to be moving to the application review. That is the next part of our business this evening. And we will be beginning with an application review of TB 2201 Woodland Pond Circle. Is there anyone here representing Woodland Pond?
Yes, Michelle Gramoglia, the CEO, is here on Zoom, as is
Kevin
Kevin Bernstein, our attorney.
Kevin Bernstein, counsel.
Great, thank you. So we are now, everyone knows the summary of it. You've modified the plan. You are seeking approval of cottages 1 and 3, while continuing to address the stormwater and wetland concerns with cottage 2. And you will be submitting a revised plan for cottage 2 sometime in the future. So at this point, what we need to do is we need to go through our next steps and go through some of the issues. Ashley, do you want to kind of lead us through this?
Give it to us. That was a question.
No, that's to
Ashley.
our attorney.
Okay, I didn't hear you say Ashley. Sorry.
Sure. So I had drafted a resolution of approval for the board's consideration this evening. Since then, earlier today, you did receive correspondence from the applicant's attorney regarding the question of recreation land, the parkland findings that are included in the proposed resolution of approval. There are certain things that I would just like to clarify in that letter, some things that are incorrect under the law and some other, I think, factual issues. I'll just go through those quickly.
Excuse me, first, before we do that, I would like to address a question that has been posed that I think is really important here. We do have a time period when material that is sent to the board is sent so that we can read it and so that we can then make our decisions based upon that. I believe this memo arrived. When did this memo arrive?
12:30 today. I received it at 12:30 today.
What time did this memo arrive? Was it in?
11:17.
So 11:17, so dropping it around noon for us is, and then asking us to give consideration to the points that are in that, especially when they are complicated and more legal questions. Quite frankly, I think that's a precedent that I don't really want to set for the board, that an applicant can deliver information to us and expect us the same day to act upon it. So we really have the choice based upon that as to whether we want to consider that letter that was written, if we want to consider it at all today. And if not, then it would be pushed back to the next meeting. So I'd like to get some opinion from the board.
Chairman Litton, can I just share one thing?
Sure.
We did not get the resolution draft from Ashley until Friday evening. So in particular, a point of contention, basically within one business day. So we had one business day to respond to that, which was yesterday. So we would certainly have gotten it in sooner, but we will defer to whatever you decide.
Thank you.
So you were aware that of the recreation findings that were going to be incorporated into the resolution that was discussed at the last meeting. You were present, your attorney was present as well.
I was present and we rejected it.
We were not aware of
Understood,
the
you're
specific
entitled to your opinion,
language.
excuse me, but everyone gets a chance to speak, and now it's my chance to speak. And so that's one item. And secondly, we did not get the revised submission from you until the 26th, I believe it was, of this month. So the resolution then took a couple of days from that to finalize based on that submission. So
I would just suggest, because we've been subject to a change in the secretary for the planning board and the attorney for the planning board during this application, that maybe the entire submission process and response timing could be tightened up, because it seems like we're frustrated on both sides. You're frustrated with things that applicants are receiving and applicants are frustrated. So it might be something for the planning board to think about in general.
Thank you. We'll certainly keep that in mind.
The only thing I would add, if I might, is just to, and we've certainly got in sooner if we could have. We were specifically waiting really for the draft resolution before we could respond to it, because otherwise it'd kind of be like playing darts. You just wouldn't know where to begin. So we were really working off of that. And frankly, and Ashley, I'm not criticizing Ashley for when she got the draft resolution done. Frankly, I'm appreciative of the fact that we did receive a draft resolution. But we try to get it to our views on the particular issue as soon as we possibly could. And if we could have gotten it to you sooner, we would have. So for that, we apologize. We would request that we respectfully request that the board consider that particular issue, because it's really just one issue. Everything else really in the resolution, we have no objection to. So it's really that one item, and which we raised last time. And here we're just kind of adding a little bit more color to it in response to the draft resolution. And that's it.
I can certainly appreciate that. However, one simple issue and one straightforward issue from you could certainly then set a precedent for someone who had multiple and more complex issues might ask and request for the same thing, and use our willingness to go beyond our standard rules for you in the submission that they make. And I'm really hesitant to do that. Let's get some opinion from the board, simply because this one issue, you're right, it is very clear, it's very straightforward, very simple, and there's a request and a response that could easily be worked through this evening. However, again, I am hesitant to do that because there are other applications that are following you that will have many more pieces of material, and I would hate to see them ask us within a very short period of time under that deadline to give them consideration. So, Mr. Sudo, would you like to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I am. I'm hearing the timing and I'm hearing the feedback, Michelle. I rejoined the planning board fairly recently, so I didn't endure the transitions that you did, but I recognize that that there might have been some delays to the application over time. I'm not particularly frustrated by the receipt of the letter at noon. I just feel like it's actually a pretty substantial set of considerations. It does involve the requirement to consult the code in real detail, to consult with our attorneys to make sure we've approached the decision correctly, and to make sure the decision gets the consideration that you're asking. And if we as a planning board, it's our responsibility is to consult the code carefully, consult with our attorneys carefully, and give you the consideration it deserves. I'm just not able to do that when you might know that this isn't our day job either. So I just asked for the consideration to be given the time to think it through. If in fact you're requesting us to overturn or change a decision that was actually thoughtfully made 2 weeks ago at the meeting, and I understand it was made to your objection, but it was made. So so I was the one who raised the question. I'm also thoughtful about the precedent it sets. I mean, there is a protocol for the way we consider information and when it's received. But as much as anything, I just don't feel prepared to be able to make a new decision about something that's been decided with information that was received so recently.
Zach, do you
Okay, so
have
if I may, just
Michelle, you're breaking up.
I'm just wondering what you both referenced. I'm sorry, I'm just wondering what the submission deadlines are.
The submission deadline is 3 weeks in advance of a meeting if you're a new applicant, and 1 week in advance of the meeting if you are an active applicant.
Okay, so that's what you're trying to rein everybody into. Okay,
That's what it's
so we got
always
the
been.
resolution Friday. Okay.
The submission, and that's not really, I mean, I wouldn't consider this a submission like what Ashley talked about before, the application documents. I think you mentioned July 26th, which was a week ago, I think. So that sounds about right in terms of meeting that deadline. This was simply in response to the language in the draft resolution, including this condition. We understand that we had a discussion about this issue last time. But it didn't become concrete. And we frankly didn't know whether or not the draft resolution that Ashley would prepare for the board's consideration would include the language that it does. So until we saw that, we didn't know that that's how the language would be portrayed. So that's really all we did. All we did was react to that. It's really not a submission in the general sense like what was submitted on July 26th. So it really doesn't fall into either of the categories, the 3-week or 1 week category that you just described. This is a little unusual, I would admit, but this is really in response to that resolution. And, I mean, we could talk, I mean, I would prefer to talk about, facts and what the site actually does offer in the nature of recreational opportunities for its residents. And ultimately the decision as to whether or not you vote on this tonight is yours. Obviously, we obviously hope you do, and hear what we have to say and I'm not going to regurgitate what's in the letter. I really won't. It's no sense of doing that. But I might add a little bit of color to it in terms of the facts that we believe show that there's no need here to either recommend that additional parkland be provided or that what I call an in lieu fee is appropriate. So I mean, I would love to have the opportunity to set out our arguments, if you will, and then ultimately it's your decision and your decision alone as to whether or not you want to consider that tonight or table it. It's really, that's all we're asking at this point.
Okay, here's and I can certainly appreciate that you were able to encapsulate and summarize your argument there in those brief moments. However, again, I don't want to set the precedent. We also have one of the members who is not comfortable in making the decision now because they've not had time to read and absorb the material. And so I'm going to check with the other two members of the board, but right now there are two of us that don't want to make the decision tonight. Zach, would you like to weigh in this? Rachel, what are your thoughts?
Yes. Hi, John. I certainly agree with you that we don't want to set a precedent here, but I feel like I was able to review the Woodland Pond memo and then our attorney's response, and so I feel prepared to discuss it tonight.
Rachel? And you're on mute.
Okay, so I have a slightly different take on this because I really feel like the rec fee is about the community, right? And the 54 acres that are in the conservation easement, while you know, I feel like I would be more than happy to waive the rec fee if we were allowed public access. And if it could be part of the greater
Rachel, I think right now the question is just whether you're prepared to discuss this tonight or you feel like you need more time to prepare.
I see. I would go with the majority on that. I wouldn't want someone
Well,
to.
there is no majority. We're just trying to determine what you believe, whether you feel you are prepared to speak about it tonight, given the short notice, and whether you believe that it does not set a precedent to consider something that was delivered the day of the meeting. But so it's essentially, do you want to continue to discuss it and make a recommendation on it, or waive it until the next meeting?
I feel comfortable, but I wouldn't want to pressure somebody else who doesn't feel comfortable to do it.
We would certainly be willing to discuss what Rachel just suggested, certainly.
Yeah,
If I could just
100%.
Also just comment on that though, because
And I think
the planning board doesn't have the ability to waive the rec fee. That's not within their authority. So the issue for the planning board to decide, which had been discussing and certainly be discussed again, perhaps in more detail this evening, is whether there is a need for public parkland, public recreation areas in the village, and then whether the proposed site plan contributes to that need. So it's not, and I understand, Rachel, I think what you're getting at, not so much a waiver of the rec fee, but whether or not is there a need, and that if there is a need, that could be satisfied by, whether it could be satisfied by parkland that's available on the site. The issue there is that in order to be even considered as possibly being suitable parkland under the code, it does need to be open to the public. So private parks for private recreation areas could never qualify under the code. So I think that's the heart of the issue that you were getting at there.
The conservation easement specifically allows for public access if we grant it.
If you grant it.
And we we are
Yeah,
willing
your
to
letter
do so, Rachel.
specifically said that it does not allow for public. So it's
No, it doesn't grant nor prohibit. So I don't know if
Right.
we're going to have the discussion now. So I'd like to defer to Chairman Litton about whether the discussion is going to happen.
Okay.
We are prepared to put a lot of things on the table, but we need to defer to Chairman Litton.
Okay, so we're going to have a discussion of it, and as I understand the code, what we are to determine, and this is what the conversation is going to be centered around, what we are to determine is, first, is there a need for recreation within the village? That's the very first thing. So let's make a discussion of that. Zach, you want to weigh in on that?
Yes, I firmly believe that is the case, and yeah, I think that's
I think it's
self-evident.
pretty much, but we just need to make sure that we're clear on that. I believe that there is indeed a need for public parkland. The second aspect then that we need to discuss is,
Well, and while you were on that one issue, I know, I believe in the letter, the applicant did bring up the recreation fee law that was adopted in 2018. So I think it's definitely relevant to this board's consideration that law in its specific findings and purpose section did itself find that there is a need. I think it actually said a critical need for parkland and recreation, something of that nature. And it would also be appropriate for the board to consider the comprehensive plan in the village and how the plan provides for recreation, parkland needs, and what the goals of the comprehensive plan are as well.
that's the plan from 2018, correct?
The law was from 2018. The comp plan, I believe, was
2020?
in the,
No, earlier.
Earlier
I
than
think
that?
it was in the 90s, I believe.
1994.
91, okay.
That's the original.
Just to clarify our letter, I don't think we stated in a really general sense that there's no need for public park plans in the village. I think what we're saying is that as a result of this site plan, there's no additional need for public parklands. I think there's a distinction between the two. We're not, you know, as a general sense, I know that it's as the mayor said earlier, I think that from the community perspective, it's important to make sure that there's sufficient parklands for the residents of the community. All we're saying simply is that as a result of this site plan, given the already existing recreational opportunities on the site, including the conservation easement, that no additional parkland designation and or in lieu fee is required as a result of what's already being provided as a result of this site plan. So I think that there's a distinction between the two.
Well, we've already made a decision earlier that there is a need for parkland within the village, and that this site plan not being able to provide for parkland, and we felt that the site plan requires that the units add to the need for parkland and recreation areas as according to the code. And we made that decision. The issue now is because we've made that decision, that we need to follow through with that decision that we made. And I understand that you object to that decision, and I can appreciate that. And I understand that our attorney has made a case likewise, but the decision's already been made. And as far as the amount that will be required, that comes from the village board. That does not come from the planning board. We have no influence on that at all. So quite frankly, we've made that decision. And I'm stating that we need to hold to the decision that we made.
Okay, so if I may, because this is probably not the last application Woodland Pond will be making, is there criteria that dictates a need for public parkland? Because certainly the parks are not full. Certainly we are willing to put conservation space on the table available for public use, 54 to 56 acres. So when the planning board says, yes, there's a need, what are the criteria that are used for that? Because we're going to have to think about this going forward. Is it because the mayor wants more parkland, or is it because there's an actual need for it? Or what are those criteria?
Actually, I'm going to let you handle this, but basically the criteria is for us to decide whether there is a need by the addition of population to the population of the village of New Paltz, and that by adding to the population, is there a resulting need for increased parkland or recreation areas and facilities? And it's our belief that there is based upon that.
Yeah. John, if I could,
So it's really-
the code also, just if I could add, the code also contemplates future need for parkland, not just immediate need. And, you know, you may know that some of the projects that happened fairly recently in this village were done, including the new park at Hasbrook, we're done with the funds from the recreation fees. So I think that, maybe Ashley can explain a little more specifically about the next time that this village might make some sort of formal assessment of the need, but the need is considered great now, and there's a future projection included in the code as well.
Sure, and I think it's really twofold. So it deals with the present need for parkland, and I thought your attorney had agreed that there is a present need for parkland, or certainly did not dispute or say that you were disputing that fact that generally in the village there's a need for parkland and recreation areas presently. The second part of that is whether the site plan contributes to the need, and that's based on factors including the new residents that will be added to the village as a result of the site plan, and what's projected by that, whether it's expected that they would be utilizing, public recreation areas. So I'm just putting aside for a second the comments that are being made for the first time that I'm hearing anyway about possibly changing the conservation easement or using that land as parkland, because that hasn't been really discussed previously. So that goes
Actually, that was raised the last time we were here. Rachel asked, and we did say yes.
Yes.
So
you mentioned
Rachel, we had this discussion at the last
Excuse me.
meeting.
I believe there was a question as to whether or not it provided for it, and I thought that you had indicated it did provide for public access, but reading
no, they have to take down the.
It's within our purview. So it neither allows for nor denies access to the public land. This is within our purview, and we are open to public access.
I think
in order to be public parkland under the state and village code for purposes of this section, it's not that it could be within your purview, it has to be actual public parkland. So, and you could, the board can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't recall, and I'm just trying to look for the spot in your letter, if you could just bear with me for 1 second, but it did, the conservation easement does not automatically make the
while you're
land
looking for that,
subject to the public. I'm reading, I found it now. It says the conservation easement does not automatically make the land subject to the easement available to now. So I'm saying
correct,
now
it doesn't automatically make it.
Exactly. So if
Right,
it
because
was
we were
public
thinking that
parkland,
as we
that would be
talked.
something that would be, that's a different question. I understand now you're saying that it could be under or within your purview, and that you perhaps are willing to use that.
It's exactly as Rachel described.
But we're still
so
we're still in the first part of the test. So first we're at whether there's a need, whether the proposed site plan contributes to that need. If those questions are both answered yes, then you go on to whether or not there's suitable land on the site that can be reserved for parkland. So that would be
right. So what we have asked is, as the planning board has stated that they feel that there's a need, we're asking what are the criteria for that, and no criteria have been described. It's just been sort of we all feel that there is a need for it. So
I guess I
think
not
to move on. I think
whether
to move
it's
on
what
from this
part of the
point,
need are you speaking of, the general village need or
yes,
no.
because we're looking at open parks.
Let me just clarify, Michelle. So first of all, the code, 212-23 focuses on the site plan and whether or not the site plan, as the chair of the planning board indicated, whether or not the site plan gives rise to a need. Now, we disagree, of course, because we don't think 12 elderly individuals who are going to be coming onto our community creates an additional need for parkland within the village as a whole. Okay, but let's move on from that, and hearing that the finding, which we disagree with, is that this site plan adding 12 individuals, really 3 units, because last time we talked about whether it's units or people. I think we focused. I think what I heard as a result is it's not the number of people, it's the number of units. So through the 3 units added to this site adds for needed parkland within the village. The planning board, as I hear it, has concluded that the answer to that question is yes. Okay, then beyond that, the code then says, okay, look at the site to see whether or not the site can provide, and not just, the word parkland is not the only words used. It says contain public parkland or recreational facilities suitably located thereon. So what we're saying is, we would agree that if the conclusion of the board in this resolution is that this site gives rise as a result of 3 additional units to the need for public parkland, that the conservation easement provides the recreational facilities on the site that satisfies that need. And that's really, simply stated, that's the crux of what we're arguing, without getting
Okay.
into all the details of the letter.
All right.
So just a couple
Okay,
of things,
wait,
because I
excuse
do
me.
want to point out that there is criteria that the village addresses, and one of them, although it's based on residential units, that's you figure whether the unit itself gives the rise. Of course, the amount of potential residents that would be accommodated by the units is something that considers. So if it was a single family home, you consider, typical size of a family. Here, you'd indicated that I think the 12 residents would be anticipated
Well,
for
elderly
the unit.
residents, I
So
might add.
Well, there's
So
nothing in
whoever-
excuse me, there's nothing in the code that states about the age or whether they're elderly or not.
I understand, but
There is
I'm
nothing in the
simply,
code about whether they're elderly or not.
I don't
So
disagree, but
wait, please. We've had a great discussion here, a very robust discussion, but we made a decision and I'm sticking to that decision. If you had a difficulty with that decision, then you can take up whether your contribution of the wetlands will work in lieu of the funds and payments that are required. But from my standpoint, we have made a decision and we need to stick with the decision that we made. If you have a disagreement with it, I can greatly appreciate it. And you can bring that to the village board and talk about what needs to be negotiated so that perhaps you do not have to have the payment in lieu of the parkland by opening up that parkland. But that is a discussion for you to have with them. That's not a discussion for you to have with us. And I think that we have reached the end of this discussion for tonight.
So John, if I can just on that one piece, because if this is a new piece now with whether the next point of your analysis and whether there could be suitable parkland located on the site. So right now, currently the easement is private, or there's no public access allowed. It's within their purview, but it's not currently allowed. So if the board.
It
would
is actually,
consider-
Ashley, we don't
Michelle,
prohibit
excuse me.
Ms.
anyone from.
Gramoglia, please stop. Ms.
Site. We
Gramoglia,
prohibit
please
no
allow
one
her
from
to
the
finish.
site.
Ms.
Michelle?
Gramoglia, please allow her to finish.
You've had your opportunity, your attorney's had your opportunity. I would expect the same respect. Again, dealing with this new question of whether or not the board would find this conservation easement area or a portion of it suitable parkland under those objective criteria that are set forth in the code as far as the size, the location, where it is within the village, whether there's a need in that area, that type of analysis. So if that's something the board wants to consider this evening, you could certainly discuss that, because that would be something that you consider before going on to the actual, to deciding that, no, it's not suitable, and that's why you require the fee in lieu.
what we would request. Thank you, Ashley.
Could I just make one comment? I feel like this is it's a unique opportunity. It's an absolutely beautiful pond. It's 54 acres and it's adjacent to a park that's already established. It would be a beautiful addition to the Millbrook Preserve. If it were possible, I think it would be great. I don't work out the details.
Where does that leave us? We can move forward by having this sent to the board based upon the decisions that we have previously made, or we can reopen it. If we're going to reopen it, then we need some time to talk and give consideration as to the details of this and what might be asked for in negotiation. So
Yeah, if I could just say, John, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I would just say the only reason for continued discussion would be whether there is new information about the discretionary decision to open up that land and for us to consider that land as parkland adequate to meet the need in the code. That would be the only new information that I would think would reopen the question.
and do we have that?
I think so, because just the comment that she made at the last meeting took me by surprise. because when she talked about it as being a place that the public could access, I know they don't kick people out of there right now, but it's not officially part of the park. And there are signs that say no trespassing. So news to me at the last meeting, and I thought pretty exciting.
So I guess perhaps the question would be, what would that proposal look like? What would you be offering? And I don't know that it's something you have a specific
Kevin
area,
just
is it the
described,
whole entire?
so Kevin just described the way that the code reads, that it would either need to be designated parkland or recreational area available for use. So this would fall into that category. But what I am hearing Chairman Litton saying is that this is not a decision of this planning board anymore. This is now a decision of the village board, because the planning board has already made their decision that more parkland is needed. So is this negotiation with this planning board or with the village board?
I
at this
think
So
point?
it's not a
in fact,
negotiation, it's a
Right.
question for the planning board as to whether they're going to consider, because again, now this idea of whether this conservation easement area is going to be opened up to the public, if that would qualify as suitable public parkland under the code, and if it could be reserved on the site, then that would be the board's finding that the parkland requirement is satisfied by the reservation of land rather than by a fee in lieu.
in a
But
sense,
again,
it's
that,
not. Sorry, Ashley, go ahead. I thought you were
that's
done.
really a new question, I guess you could.
All we're asking is that there is within the paragraph on the findings, it says no suitable location. All we're saying is that be revised to say that the applicant has agreed that the conservation easement property that is located on its property will be made available to the public for recreational opportunities, which would satisfy the requirement under section 212-23 of the code. That's really all we're asking.
So in order, and it was drafted in this fashion because that wasn't previously proposed or identified as public. So the idea was that in order to satisfy that, there was no other land available on the site that could be reserved outside of that conservation easement, which was not presently a public park. So I think that in order to consider that, the board would likely need to know what the facilities are, what areas, is it going to be the entire thing?
So the board has a
type
description of the entire conservation easement, and that's the property that we're discussing without limitation.
Without limitation, okay.
Right.
Without
Let me
limitation.
clarify, without limitation, as long as activity do not violate the conservation easement. Obviously, you can't, there's a whole set of prohibitions within the conservation easement of what people can't do to preserve that property. Obviously, but any kind of recreational activity would not violate the conservation easement.
Okay, here's what I'm
I
gonna,
think the board would need to look at the easement, what it allows in comparison to what the village code deems suitable recreation areas, and to make that analysis. I don't think that's something that could be done right now.
I agree. And so here's what I'm gonna ask of you is, now we've made a decision, and I told you my intention is to stay with the decision, but I'm gonna give a little here, and I'm gonna expect a little back. I want you guys to come back in 2 weeks with a plan that's gonna detail what can be used, where it is, hours of use, how it is to be used. And if you do that, then we can consider it, but on the fly, we just can't. So
Alternatively, Chairman Litton, with all due respect, if we agree to pay the
I'm sorry, you're breaking up very badly.
this all goes away for the money.
Yeah.
Well,
It's an either or situation.
So what I'm saying to you is, if we agree right now to pay the fee, this issue goes away. And the planning board determines the fee.
No, that's not accurate. The fee is something that's set by the village board. It's not set by by the planning board, but in order for the planning board to consider, because
Which includes that.
this just is not something that's previously been discussed as to whether there could be suitable land on site. You've asked the planning board to consider that. I think now they're able to consider whether that's suitable.
Okay, if we created a resolution already that we've agreed to, that is going to be passed to the board by virtue of a vote tonight. Which states so far that there is a need and that the need cannot be satisfied on the current site plan. And so there is a decision that it would then be passed to the Village of New Paltz Board of Trustees to determine a fee in lieu of the parkland itself. That's where we're at. If you want
Okay,
to,
so-
hold on, please.
So-
Well, just a minute, please. If you want to have us consider, and if you are offering to present the conservation easement area to as part of that program, so that then we would consider that as satisfying the need as opposed to the payment in lieu of that satisfaction, then I'm going to request that you put together a plan and come back to us so that we can have a more detailed discussion about what that would involve, so that we can see if it would indeed satisfy what we are looking for.
Okay,
That's
so
kind of the,
given that, Chairman Litton, given that and the enormous delays that we've encountered because of personnel changes and all kinds of issues, and the fact that we can't continue to carry this on, we're just going to accept the resolution as it's written, and we will accept the parkland fee, and we will deal with it secondarily after the fact. So if you would please bring this to a vote as is, we would appreciate it, because we can't continue to take these delays. And there's just criteria seem like they keep changing, and we can't, our project has been delayed since February. So we want to get this moving forward, please.
okay.
So
That's fine.
your project has not been delayed. It's gone through the course. There were some questions that were very novel issues with your project, dealing with this settlement, dealing with this history of the original approval. It's up to the board. I think that you asked the board to consider this factor, and now the board can consider that. I think if the board wants to still pursue this reservation on site, you have the ability as a board to do so, unless you're saying you're no longer going to be willing to open that up.
We can't continue with the delays, Ashley.
Yeah, I think that's all she's saying. We need to move forward.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
So then
Just for the record, you're waiving, so everything that's in your letter, I think.
No, we're not waiving anything. We're reserving all of our rights. And
Right.
we're simply saying that.
So then I would advise the board that you should still go through and make the analysis, because they've raised these issues and there's no sense in them just saying approve it as is, and then you'll have to just if they want to then challenge it.
All right, so let's walk through here. Thank you.
Make your findings.
Okay, thank you. All right, so here's what we're going to do. The first issue here is there a need for recreation parkland? And I think that we have all agreed that yes, indeed, there is a need. The second part of the issue is, does the site plan have the capacity, or will they be able to provide the necessary area for the recreation area? And we've heard that no, they are not going to be, they won't do, it's not going to happen. And so then I guess the last thing we need to do then is to determine if, based upon that, do we need to, whether we will send it to our Village Board of Trustees to make a determination of the fee in lieu of the recreation area itself.
John, can I offer one point in support of
Yes.
what you're saying? The step in between is there a need and will the plan meet that need is whether the new residential, the new occupants of these sites will contribute to a future and or current need. And we've talked about the idea that it's likely to be 6 residents of the community. You know, we've looked at this in the context of residential homes and other subdivisions. So we want to consider whether, and Zach and Rachel might want to weigh in on that, whether the addition of these residents will contribute to that need, and then whether they can meet the need on site.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, please, go ahead.
One thing that I haven't heard mentioned in this meeting is that I don't believe it's just the residents that are contributing to the need. I think there will be family members, visitors, you know, kids that are also going to be visiting and, you know, looking for things to do in New Paltz and recreation areas.
Okay.
Thanks for that, Zach. It was actually one of the things mentioned. I appreciate you doubling down on it.
In our experience, by the way, at all with the current residents, and most residents don't have little children.
Okay,
They have
we appreciate
grown
that. This is a discussion that's between the board members right now. Thank you.
Just getting facts.
So then the next part of it between the board members is based upon this, do we believe that we want to present this to the board of trustees for consideration of a payment in lieu of?
So if I could just jump in there. So the next
Sure.
question would really be whether there is land. Let me just read here from the code. Whether there's land that can be reserved on the actual site for public parks, playgrounds, and other recreation areas in such locations that's consistent with the comprehensive plan, or where the planning board otherwise determines is appropriate under the circumstances. There are specifics as far as the size, dimension, topography of what would qualify as suitable. The minimum would be 1,300 square feet for new residential units, and the park or playground or recreation area would have to be at least a half acre. So it's whether there can be reserved on site. I think this is presently, is my understanding of the conservation easement, is that it's not open to the public. So it would have to be some suitable area outside of the recreation area, as the applicant's no longer willing tonight to discuss the ability to open that land up to the public. And the 1,300 square feet per unit, that's something different than the common usable outdoor space that's required under your special use permit standards. That's a completely different requirement, and this is a requirement again for public parkland. So whether there's suitable land on site under those standards.
Okay.
There's a beaver pond, a big, beautiful beaver pond. And paths going around it.
Rachel, it's off the table. It's off the table now. We need to get a decision tonight because we can't keep going through all these new
Okay.
analyses every
Thank you.
time. So please
Thank
just
you.
treat it as if.
Thank you. Thank you.
Unfortunately,
so-
Rachel.
Thank you. So we've had that discussion, and so actually, what is the next piece of the requirements?
So what was is your finding that there's no?
There's
It's
not
not.
according to what's currently
No.
proposed to the board.
No, there's.
And Zach and may have something more to say.
Yeah, I agree. Looking at the site plan, I just don't see that being possible.
Okay. I agree.
May I ask whether or not the open space areas that this board, or much earlier iteration, required be maintained on the site, like 21,000 square feet of community garden space, there are 83,000 square feet of Alzheimer's Park and garden space, was that considered as part of not parkland? Again, the code does not just say parkland, by the way. It says playgrounds, public parks, or other recreational purposes for land.
Correct.
So it's a misnomer to just focus on the word parkland, because there are other things to which property on a site can be dedicated for those residents, for
And then-
recreational
But is
purposes.
that-
And Karen,
open
I
to the,
agree, and I was, in the discussions about parkland, it was referring to all of those elements just to shorten it and not read them all out each time, but it refers to those parkland, playgrounds, recreation areas that are covered. And again, the question for that would be, it's not currently open to the public, so those are still private areas. If it was going, it has to be a public park, public playground, or public recreation area in order to meet that requirement under the code. So that then circles back to the issue that we're told is off the table.
Okay.
And
Any further considerations that through other members of the board? No?
No, not for me.
Okay, so we've satisfied that. Ashley, why don't you lead us to the third point, please?
So if there's not suitable land on the site for public park or playground or recreation area, then you would be waiving the requirement to show it on the site in exchange for the applicant to pay a fee in lieu of parkland, which is in an amount set by the Board of Trustees.
So shall we take a motion on that?
So it's incorporated into the draft resolution.
Okay.
So if nothing's changed from what's in that
Right.
portion of the resolution, then it could just be accomplished when you go through the resolution and vote on that.
Very good.
Question about one of the general conditions, general condition 5. I mean, our intent would be to get before the village board as soon as possible. I don't know what their schedule is, but our intent as well simultaneously would be to get plans to the building inspector as soon as possible. And I'm not sure whether condition 5 would allow him to sign off on those building plans until we have a fee determination. And we'd like to move forward with getting those building plans signed by the building inspector while we have these discussions with the village board, which, may take more than a meeting. And, so it's really just a question of clarification more than anything else.
So general condition number 5 speaks to fees being paid before a building permit's issued.
Right.
The code itself requires the fee in lieu to be paid before the plans are signed. I'm just looking at 21223. So that's something in the code that the planning board can't vary as far as the timing of the payment.
The next village board meeting is
Okay,
August
I'm
10th.
just looking for the
August 10th.
provision.
It's 21223. It's the last section under J3.
No, not me.
And we learned the next village board meeting is the 10th of August.
Where does it say anything about the building permit being issued on 3?
I'm sorry, the building permit was the general condition that you were reading
No, I
from, but
understand.
this section says that the amount, the section of the code speaks about the requirement to pay the amount of the fee in lieu to the village clerk prior to the signing of the site plan. So, I mean, you could still, I think, submit your plans to the building department to start their review, but nothing could be signed until that issue.
In the section?
It's
I'm not finding it. I'm sorry.
in the village code section?
Yeah.
Sure, so it's 21223J3, it's the last paragraph.
Right.
It is kind of in the middle of the paragraph. Let me count what sentence. Give me a second. 1. I think it's the third sentence. The amount of such payment shall be set annually by resolution of the Board of Trustees and must be
Right.
paid to the village clerk prior to the signing of the plan.
Okay.
Do you see that?
Yep.
Okay, so
And again, there is, I believe, if there's an annual, if, the village already has in place a fee, or whether you're trying to get them to asking that they set a specific fee by resolution, that's
Well, that's what we'll do.
outside this
Of
board's.
course, and
That's certainly something the village, the Board of Trustees for the village, are authorized to consider. But that's
Right.
not part of what we do. So,
Understood.
let's move on then to the, resolution of approval. I actually want to lead us through, the pieces of that as we get down to the final, actual resolution of approval and the specific conditions.
Sure. So has everyone on the board had a chance to review the application? I mean, I'm sorry, the resolution?
Yes.
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 Okay. So it follows your standard format where you summarize the project, you identify the property, you list out all of the plans and other submittals that are the basis of your decision, the procedural history. You do go through and make various findings. Here, there's quite a few findings because you had these special use permit individual standards in addition to the special use permit general standards. If there's anything anyone has a question about or wants to modify, just please jump in at any time. The findings is also where you have your parkland findings as well. And then once you get to the resolution of approval, I could read through the specific conditions for you and
Let's go ahead and start with that because I don't think there's any conversation.
and I guess since Kevin, did you have any questions about the specific conditions or any of the general ones other than that earlier question?
no, as we've mentioned, we object to the findings and we object to specific condition 8 and general condition 5. And we overall object to the, and we've stated these objections before that we don't believe that the code requires that recreational facilities on the site actually be available to the public, but simply be available to the residents so that therefore there's no additional impact on the public parks in the town, in the village, excuse me. But I mean, again, I understand you disagree with that and we'll move on from there. And we'll just have to deal with that disagreement moving forward.
So actually, we see a correction that needs to be made here.
Yeah. In the, in point 8, which is the one relevant to this discussion, I believe the idea of 4 new units was left in from the original plan. And is it, I believe that should read 3.
No, it's 4.
4 units because it's 2 duplex units.
Okay.
Okay, so
Got
that. Thank you. Sorry about
Thank
that.
you.
That's correct.
I just wanted to make one point in that the 1994 the comprehensive plan for the village of New Paltz specifically lays out the area that we're talking about as being desirable for parkland, as being worthy of preserving. It's in the plan. I guarantee it. It's part of the what should be part of the mill reserve. That's all I'm going to say. It's in the plan. I think we're making a mistake by not accepting that.
Okay. All right. So
And just to comment on that, Rachel, so the village or the planning board this evening was certainly willing to discuss that with the applicant as to whether that qualified under the code requirement for public parks or parkland or public recreation areas, since it's not presently open to the public, but the applicant is no longer willing to.
Well, to clarify.
Actually,
and
Ashley,
again, I
that's
hate to
not
interrupt.
correct.
Right. We only did that because we wish to have the resolution adopted tonight. This conservation easement is nothing new to the village. In fact,
Your willingness though to open it up to the public is something that's new because it's presently, as you said, within your purview and it's not something that is as of right open to the
I don't
public.
understand
So
how that
this
makes
is
any difference.
Because the code
And
requires.
it was raised at the last meeting.
At the
this
last meeting, you
document-
said that you thought it was already open to the public and then,
No, we said we were
Determined that it
willing
was
to
not?
open it.
okay.
well, then
That's
nothing
correct.
in your most recent submission or your plan indicated that you were going to be opening that up to the public. So
It's a fundamental question. I mean, this document And it was actually required by the original approval by this planning board in 2007, this document being the conservation easement. And then we were required to supply it to the village to demonstrate that we had engaged and actually granted a conservation easement for those acres, and we did that. And the reason for that was exactly really the fundamental purpose behind what we're talking about today, okay? But, okay, we're not the only party here. And so therefore, it was negotiated with the Wallkill Valley Land Trust that public access would be provided or not, depending on whether or not it met the guidelines of the facility, okay? All we're saying, it's simple. That we said we would provide public access. I don't understand why this board, frankly, who required this document 15 years ago, this conservation easement, needs to further look at it to decide that these 56 acres that we're willing to say will be open to the public, okay, as recreational facilities, as long as people comply with the conservation easement that this village board, planning board, made us obtain. I don't understand why that is, to me, it's not a giant leap, frankly, to reach that conclusion, and really requires no further study. It boggles my mind that something that this village planning board, this board required, and I went to every village planning board like 15 years ago, and I sat through that, and we did it, and we did it in a way that was responsible and allowed public access. And now is the opportunity. Now is this board's opportunity. This board has the opportunity, as Rachel mentioned, to conclude that the requirement, the parkland requirement and recreational parkland requirement that was actually adopted several years after can satisfy that goal. But the board, because of formality and procedure, is unwilling to do that.
No, the board, you're asking them to consider something for the first time. There's a difference between open space and public parkland. When it was required as open space, it wasn't required as public parkland. But I think that the board should do that review, and and consider whether you want to require that to be open to the public. You could certainly do that, and you could analyze that at your next meeting.
You have that opportunity within your
put them in this position where you're arguing for one thing and then also saying that you want the resolution approved this evening. So I think it would be prudent for the board to still consider that issue, and whether you want to.
I think it's very prudent of us to consider that issue, and so I am going to take a motion from the board to delay further discussions on this until our next meeting, so that we have time to consider the different aspects that have been introduced tonight.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We and Kevin, with all due respect, I'm taking it off the table. We cannot continue to go through these reviews.
Okay,
we have got to get some kind of resolution. Waiting since February. This is not a big issue.
Ms. Gramoglia, we understand that, and we were headed towards the finalization of the approval of the resolution, and then your attorney decided that we needed to reintroduce this information once more. So I think that there's a value. Excuse me, please. You've had plenty of time. We've spent well over an hour discussing these same points over and over again. Excuse me, please. So at this point, the decision is either we go through with this, or we take our time and go next week at our next meeting and finish the discussion.
Yeah, and the only way we would want to return to this conversation next week or next meeting would be if the applicant presents a clear response to whether the land that continues to be brought into the conversation is going to be the land that we are to consider for point number 3 in this code consideration, which is, will the plan that's proposed before the board satisfy the need by virtue of being available, not just to those residents, but also to the public? If the applicant wants to bring that consideration back to the board, that is actually maybe an exciting development, but it's not what we're here to consider today, because it's not what's been presented. and it's just being continually
But
brought into
if
the
we're not,
conversation.
but if
I'm
we're
in the
not
middle of a
willing
sentence
to,
and I would appreciate the opportunity to finish.
but if we're not willing to bring it back,
Excuse me, Ms.
Okay.
Gramoglia, please allow him to finish.
It's. I just heard you, I think I heard you because you're breaking up. But I think I heard you say you're not willing to introduce this point to the conversation and you're not willing to present it as a new consideration in the application. Is that what the applicant is deciding?
purely due to timing, correct?
So the
Could I-
applicant's decided that that new information is not in
Relevant.
consideration. If that new information is not in consideration, then I believe we have a resolution to vote on.
And we
And
would like to-
actually, I'm just looking. for
Might
your
I just add, though, that the board, it's still within your purview if you wish to require them to reserve it, if you think it could qualify under the standard, if that's the route you want to take, because I think now it's been put
The
out there
applicant is-
and
The applicant no longer wishes to introduce that into the equation.
What if
So
we vote on it? Why do we have to wait 2 weeks? I mean, I have pictures of it. It would.
Rachel, we're at the point where the applicant has made the decision. We're trying to get to the end of the resolution here, and we're so close.
in order to consider that tonight, you would have to go through those criteria
Yes,
under what's suitable land. Rachel had brought up that it's mentioned in the comprehensive plan. You would
Yes.
have to go through
but the applicant
and
doesn't
find
want to
whether it's
introduce that.
suitable.
So it's the applicant's choice if they don't want to introduce it, and as a result, we can finish up the resolution.
May I speak
Please.
briefly? Okay, thank you. That's not exactly what we're saying. I mean, I think I agree with Rachel. All we're saying is that we think that it's an easy enough pivot for this board. And I don't want to put words in Ashley's mouth, but as Ashley suggests, it's an easy enough pivot for this board to conclude that that the conservation easement, which it satisfies whatever the language is in the code that you have in that paragraph, satisfies recreation areas of adequate size to meet the requirement on the site plan. And, you know, it's just a sentence that you change, and then you add a condition that basically says that the conservation easement shall be made public, and that as long as the public complies with the conservation easement. And I'm sure you want that to be the case anyway, because you don't want people riding four-wheelers on the property. You don't want people spilling pesticides on the property. These are prohibited acts under the conservation easement. All we're saying is that it's an easy enough pivot, if this board wished to do so, to do it that way. If
Mr.
it's not,
Bernstein, may I,
yes.
I have to interrupt.
absolutely, absolutely.
So first of all, it is not an easy enough pivot. Because of the responsibilities we have as a board to take into account this very significant new consideration. When even in your 12 o'clock memo today, this new consideration wasn't introduced. It was actually introduced at 7:45 tonight. So it's not an easy pivot and it would be something that would require further consideration from this board. Secondly, I'm not even sure as a team of applicants between yourself and Ms. Gramoglia that you're on the same page with regard to what you're offering us to consider in lieu of this recreation fee. So there's two choices on the table, and we have lots of applicants looking to have our time this evening. The choices on the table are that we move forward with the resolution as drafted, which reflects the decision that this board made thoughtfully last meeting, and once again, this meeting confirmed, and is already drafted, ready to proceed, or whether you as a team of applicants want to convene and determine what you want to put before the board that we can consider in lieu of a recreation fee as suitable recreation and park land. And we'll do that for certain, but we won't do it now on the fly. Even though you might perceive it as an easy pivot, it is not the way this board functions.
We're on the same page in the sense that we wish you to move forward tonight.
Definitely on the same page.
I can't hear you, Michelle.
What we've heard is that Ms. Gramoglia, who is the lead applicant on this,
Because of timing, not on the principle.
what we've heard from Ms. Gramoglia is that she wishes to move forward with this application, and she wants to continue on with the resolution as we have it. That is what we have heard, and that's what we're attempting to do. So with that in mind, unless there is a reason why we may want to discuss the alternative, which will have to be done at the next meeting. If there's no reason to discuss the alternatives, then let's continue on and get to the bottom of the resolution. So Ashley, would you please continue?
Okay, so the first specific condition is that this approval is subject to a final engineering review of the plan set. The plan shall not be signed until receipt of a letter from the village engineer certifying that he has found the plan submitted for signature to be in proper order. And I corrected a typo there. There was an extra word that I just deleted. Number 2, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall incorporate design elements to meet the New York stretch code and provide infrastructure necessary to develop electric vehicle charging stations. Number 3, the occupancy for the new cottages shall be limited to persons who are 55 years of age or over, and the applicant, unless otherwise permitted under the village code. Unless otherwise permitted under the village code, and the applicant shall file all documentation and reports certifying compliance with the age requirements with the building inspector as required by village code section 212-41 subsection K4. Number 4, maintenance and upkeep of the senior citizen development is an ongoing obligation of the owner. The development shall employ a resident manager on site to ensure that care and maintenance is accomplished on a regular basis. Number 5, the cottages shall be equipped with emergency response systems that will be tied to the community's 24-hour security staff as set forth in the applicant's special use permit narrative, and with adequate fire alarms to the satisfaction of the building inspector. Number 6, the architecture of the new cottages shall mimic that of the cottages in the existing development. Number 7, the continuing care retirement community shall comply with New York State licensing regulations under NYCRR Title 10, Chapter 7. Number 8, prior to the signing of the plans, the applicant shall deposit a cash payment in lieu of land reservation with the village clerk pursuant to Village Code Section 212-23J3 in the amount set by resolution of the Board of Trustees for the 4 new units. Number 9, no blasting is authorized by this approval. If blasting is hereafter desired by the applicant, no blasting shall be performed in connection with this application without a permit under Chapter 82 of the Village Code and blasting plan approved by the licensing officer, and then only in accordance with such approved blasting plan and permit. Number 10, all conditions of prior approvals in connection with this property shall continue to be in full force and effect, and this resolution does not supersede or otherwise modify such prior approvals and conditions except as specifically set forth in this resolution. And then you have your standard general conditions.
Thank you. So based on the reading of this, I'd like to get a motion to accept this and approve this resolution for the applicant Woodland Pond. And we are going to, I need a motion, please. And second.
Second.
And so we're going to have our project coordinator give us a voice roll vote, please.
Rachel DeGarca.
I would have voted to have the park.
That's not the question. Please answer the question.
I'm abstaining.
Abstain, okay?
Zach Galeki,
Aye.
Rich Soto,
Aye.
Karen Whitney.
Aye. So the motion is approved and the resolution is approved. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. And we now move to the next application, PB 2120, 107 Main Street. No, excuse me, I'm sorry, PB 2207, 1-3 Plattekill Avenue, Nasif Chowdury.
Chair needs to be washed.
Gentlemen, come on up.
Thank you, Matt. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Joseph Benuta. I'm the architect for the new architecture. And with me, Nasif Chowdury, who's the applicant. And we're here to discuss the final resolution and hopefully you'll approve us.
Okay. So there are a few questions that we still have that remain. At one point, we understood there to be issues, and our attorney can certainly give us a hand on this. There were issues related to the county restrictions on smoke shops. Was that resolved?
Yes.
And how was it resolved?
We will just on the back.
Yes. Hello. Can you hear my voice?
Sorry,
yes.
Mr. Gerald Jacobowitz, he's the attorney for the applicant.
Yes. Yes,
You're on, Gerald. My apologies.
I'm sorry if I'm interrupting in an improper fashion, but I'm from the old school, and this newfangled electronics are my Waterloo. So my name is Jerry Jacobowitz. I'm an attorney, and I'm here on behalf of Mr. Chowdury. So I didn't mean to interrupt your regular procedure, but I wanted to make sure that you heard me and that I was part of the meeting. So I will just sit back and wait for you folks to proceed in your usual fashion.
Okay, so
Thanks.
thank you very much. We appreciate it. Actually, is the issue of county restrictions on smoke shop, is that related solely to the sale of tobacco?
So you have right now proposed, so it deals with tobacco products, I believe is how it's defined in the law. So you have the applicant's attorney proposed some language to add a condition in there. You have always a general condition that requires applicants to obtain all other outside approvals, but they proposed one specifically for this county requirement. And I modified that slightly, but did incorporate that condition into that specific condition into the draft resolution that's before you this evening. So with that, I believe you would be able to take action because the applicant's required, acknowledging that they're required to comply with the county requirements before they could.
Right, that's specific condition number 3.
Yes.
Authorizes proposed retail smoke shop only when and if the applicant is in compliance with the tobacco retail licensing requirements of the section of the Ulster County Code. So you're telling me then that you're not going to sell any tobacco products?
Yes, we're only gonna have glasswares and those exotic chips and sodas. We're even willing to change the name from Smoke Shop to New Paltz Glassware.
Don't throw something in. Glass.
Yeah, so
Yeah. They're not requiring it
Yeah,
name
it's
change.
not
Let's keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
We will not.
Let's just keep going here.
So there won't be some tobacco.
Okay. So based on that, are there any questions? Zach, do you have any questions, or Rachel, any questions for the applicant?
No, I reviewed the approval and it all looked good to me.
Okay. Rachel, do you have any comments or anything you'd like to add to this?
No issues.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that in
You
mind.
didn't ask me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Rich.
There's no longer an advantage to be physically present. I just want to honor the community's comments and honor the fact that there's a new consideration that would be an enforcement consideration, not a planning board consideration. And I just want to make sure that you're reminded that, there's been comments related to the idea that without any evidence, obviously, that shops like yours might try to open in order to do something other than what they're authorized to do and sell. And I just want to let you know that that's not our issue, but it certainly is an enforcement question that you'd want to be thoughtful about and adhere to. It's not our obligation to tell you this, but it's our obligation to the community to just hold up what's been shared and just let you know that that's something that you really want to be thoughtful about in operating your business in our village.
100%.
Thank you.
And just another comment on that as well, Rich, I think it was brought up as far as the viability of the business. That's also something that, you know, the planning board doesn't dictate what may or may not be a good business decision. That's of course on the individual.
Thank you. So with that in mind, then I think we're going to move to the resolution of approval of special use permit for Nasif Chowdury with the application number PB 2207. And actually, when we get down to the specifics, you can certainly go through those, but this covers some very basic
I think they need-
such as identification of the plans and submittals, talks about the procedural history, the various findings, including the village code 21204A is inapplicable as a property is not located in a residential district. Location, size, and use, and nature, intensity, operations involved are such that it will be in harmony with the appropriate and orderly development of the B2 district. And it goes through a number of these very specific items, and also touching on things such as parking that you'll have to navigate. And then finally, we come to the resolution of approval. And actually, if you just lead us through this last bit of the specific and general conditions.
Sure. So there's 3 specific conditions proposed. Number 1, prior to the signing of the plan, the applicant shall revise the description of the sign on the front elevation drawing to delete the reference to the sign being internally illuminated. Number 2, no internally illuminated sign shall be permitted. The method of illumination of the proposed sign, if any, shall comply with the village sign regulations. Number 3, this resolution authorizes the proposed retail smoke shop only when and if the applicant is in compliance with the tobacco retail licensing requirements of section 301-11 of the Ulster County Code and all other applicable county, state, and local requirements. And then you have your standard general conditions.
Very good. Thank you so much for your help on that. I appreciate it. So I would like to get a motion then, please, to approve the application by virtue of the resolution, application of approval for the special use permit, application number PB 2207.
So moved.
So moved.
And second, please.
Second.
And then we will have our project coordinator once again take a voice vote.
Rachel Legato,
Aye.
Zach Bialecki,
Aye.
Rich Soto,
Aye.
Chair John Linton.
Aye.
Thank you.
So your resolution has been approved. Thank you, gentlemen, very much.
Thank you all very much.
Next, we have PB 2120, 107 Main Street, the Lemon Squeeze.
I believe they are showing via Zoom.
Are they here via Zoom?
They
Okay.
should be here then.
Someone from the applicant,
Yeah, I'm here to represent the Lemon Squeeze.
Okay. Thank you for joining us. Just a quick summary: application for site plan amendment for a previously approved bar. So I guess what we need to look at then is to have you go over the changes in the plan. We've got some issues that are noted below or noted here that we'll go through item by item, and I believe Corey has actually cured a couple of those issues that we had. So why don't you go right ahead and lead us in, please.
Sure, great. So I'll share my screen. I'd like to start with answering some of the questions from the previous meeting that we attended. So I'll share screen here. There were new comments that came up today, and that was kind of sort of the last minute revisions, but I just want to start with what was requested from last meeting, put that to bed first. There was a request for complete lighting fixture submission. So we updated the sheet A003, which is the site lighting plan, and you can see that we revised the actual list of lights themselves here. And we noted the relocation of 2 of the lights They were at the front door and they've been subsequently relocated to the two front columns there. Those are the FA3 fixtures. We also submitted a collection of the cut sheets of those light fixtures. I'm happy to bring those up and go through them if you'd like to look at them, or if what we submitted previously is satisfactory, then we can move on to the next drawing.
I think the ones that we received are satisfactory.
Great. Okay. I'm sorry, were there any questions on that drawing? That's all clear? Okay. So stuff that came up today. Well, there are things from last meeting and then things that are new. From the last meeting, the other really important thing was a request to have a registered landscape architect review and sign and seal the drawing or the planting plan. So we did have that done, and you can see the revisions that came from that that review. There were some of the plants were revised, changed to be local plants and native plants. So that's these three: the Pennsylvania sedge, the blue fortune, and the inkberry holly. Other comments that the landscape architect made, we added to the drawing, were just a clarification of where the planting beds are on the site. So you can see that there's one here in the front that's always been shown, but it's noted here. And you can see as well showing planting beds with mixed flowers and grasses, typical along the west line of the building there. And then lastly, at the back of the building, back corner of the property, down below the deck level at grade and down along the sloping hill, we're showing as well some planting beds with mixed flowers and grasses in that area. Lastly, in terms of what we coordinated with the landscape architect, two other things over on the west side here. This was sort of the problematic area where there's a lot of shade, and we wanted to lift the plants up, put them in that cantilevered raised planting bed that we discussed last time. The foliage site was changed to the holly there. It's just a better plant to be used there. You can see it would grow to 2-3 feet tall off of that cantilevered planting bed. And then you can see here also, per the landscape architect's recommendation, we're going to use a gravel bed underneath that planting bed in that sort of shadowy area, just to kind of clean that area up and keep it under control in terms of plantings. So that's, you can see here the William Kenny's sign and seal. And he had a note here just stating that he's responsible for the design. So that's everything that was requested at the last meeting. The new items that came up today, Corey gave me a call this afternoon. We discussed it. We talked about what could be done to address it. And Ashley actually subsequently had sent a couple of comments, so we addressed all that.
Right.
This latest drawing here. Here, this drawing is not the exact copy that was sent to you this afternoon that we printed and sent over. There was just, it was a lot to try to do at the last minute, but I think we got it all buttoned up. So this drawing will be submitted tomorrow. We can issue the hard copies to the office.
Okay.
So these notes here essentially tell the story. So what we're showing is a stone retaining wall along the back line of the property here. There's some landscape stairs here. You can see stone steps that lead down to the lower area underneath the deck. They're just service stairs or access stairs in the landscape. They're not part of any kind of egress or anything like that. Not intended to be used by anyone.
I want to clarify what you said to me, because it's not like that.
Can you?
Only I did have and what
Rachel, can you mute, please?
I'm sorry. I thought
Thanks. What we're indicating here is a generator that we're using at the back corner of the site. Corey's comments were about the generator not being allowed in the setback area, which is indicated here. It's a 10-foot setback. So we rearranged the location of that generator to comply with that setback requirement. You can see it laid out here. And what we're planning on doing is setting that generator on a slab that's lowered 2 feet below the grade of the driveway. What that allows us to do is have a lower screen around that generator. Instead of an 8-foot tall wall, you would have a 6-foot tall fence. And also helps a bit with the acoustic isolation, keeping the noise of the generator a little bit reduced. So that's basically the plan. There's a fence that was already shown around the dumpster, and that's required. We had to pull the dumpster a little bit further south to accommodate the rotation of the generator and its location here. But it complies with the setbacks, and we're wrapping it with a wood or PVC fence with some access doors to get you in there for service. And that's basically it.
And Mr. Vet, is there the dumpsters, is there a distance that marks, is there a note that marks the distance between the dumpster and the setback? And is that a requirement?
It is not a requirement, but we could scale it. We don't have a dimension for that. I could measure it and tell you, but we don't have a dimension for that distance. But there's nothing that regulates that or requires a PSI.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
If you just go ahead and make a note of that, that would be great. We have a note here that the village codes limit walls in non-residential districts to 8 feet in height. It appears you've got most of them at 6 feet.
Yeah, all of them 6 feet, in fact.
Perfect. Okay. So just make sure that the height of the new proposed retaining walls and heights of the fences are set out in the plan so that it's part of the plans.
Just a question. What was the question about the dumpster?
Is there a setback distance for the dumpster that is required?
So it does need to be in compliance with the setbacks for buildings under the code, which I believe it is. It's not within the rear or the side. Is that correct?
Right. So it should be 10 feet as well?
Yeah, the setback, the rear yard setback for this property is 10 feet and the side yard setback is 0. So you can see that the fence and the dumpster are well within those setbacks.
Okay. Thanks, Ashley and Mr. Vet.
Let's see, we also have a note from our attorney that the location of the generator and stairs, we did have Corey cure that for us, so that's no longer an issue. So the next item that's left really is to confirm the Ulster County Planning Board decision of no county impact. Was that received, Autumn?
I have a note in an email from the transitional secretary that it was received. I am locating the hard copy.
Okay. So with that in mind, then we're going to be looking at the draft resolution. Are there any other issues that we need to bring up? Zach, do you have anything that you want to discuss?
No, I don't see anything here that I have questions about.
Okay. So Rachel, do you have any questions on that?
It looks good to me.
Okay, thank you. And I don't want to forget you.
No, thank you.
So with that in mind, I think we are ready to move to a resolution of approval for first amendment site plan and special use permits for the Lemon Squeeze application PB 2120. Ashley, do you want to take us through this, please?
Sure. So I did modify it a little bit from the version I had sent previously to reflect the latest site plan revision date. And also some of the specific conditions. I can read those over for you when you're ready.
Go right ahead.
All right, specific condition number 1, prior to the signing of the plan, sheet A001 shall set forth the height of the proposed stone retaining wall in the rear of the property. I believe that has been added in this latest draft. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, we're calling out the height of the height of the wood fence.
Okay, so then we'll leave that in there. Number 2, prior to the signing of the plans, the specifications for the sign light on page 11 of the lighting specification packet shall be labeled FF, consistent with the lighting fixture schedule on sheet A003. So I think you just missed the label on that one sheet from what it looked like. Number 3, the sign light shall comply with the village sign regulations, village code section 21225, including the requirement that all external sources of illumination be hidden from view. Number 4, the use of the outdoor seating areas, the existing patio and proposed deck shall be limited to the part of the bar/restaurant that operates as a restaurant and shall not be part of the bar use. Number 5, no live band shall be permitted on the outside deck or patio area. The only amplification of music to the outside area shall be during hours of the restaurant use. Number 6, required landscaping shall be permanently maintained in a healthy growing condition at all times. The property owner is responsible for regular maintenance of all plantings as necessary for each particular plant species. This shall be reflected in a map note prior to the signing of the plans. Number 7, all conditions attached to the resolution of approval, site plan and special use permit for the lemon squeeze at Carroll. Application number PB 2101, issued by the Village of New Paltz Planning Board, dated November 5th, 2021, and filed in the office of the village clerk on that same date, are made a part of this approval, and this approval is subject to the same as if those conditions were set forth herein at length. And then you have your standard general conditions.
Thank you very much.
Can I just back up to just 2 of those comments, just to make sure I understand it, and we're doing what you need. We did show a fixture FF here indicated on the plan.
So it's on the actual, in that lighting specification packet that you provided.
Oh,
For the
okay.
corresponding specification sheet for that, I think was missing the label. It's
So
sheet
it's
11,
right-
I believe.
Right here, FF.
Where,
Here it says type FF.
what sheet number is that? Sheet 11?
Oh, wait, yeah, I have the individual sheet. Sorry, give me a second. I'll open up the combined one. Well, they're all individual sheets. 1, 2, 3.
So I was reviewing a whole, and I could pull it up if that's easier.
Yeah. The resubmission after the last meeting, when we sent the updated light fixture sheets, I had them here. I'll show you. There was a zip file actually. Here, I'll just show you the zip file. Zip file like this.
So I see that on there now. It was small. I didn't see it before. So
Okay. All right, great. And just the other point.
so that condition will be removed
Okay, excellent.
from the
And
resolution.
in terms
Is that
of-
number 2?
That is number 2. So that'll be removed and then everything else will move off 1.
Great, excellent. And just the other one I wanted to back up to was the stone retaining wall with the 6-foot fence that's just indicated back here. So,
So that it's a wall with a fence on top? What is it?
right, but the wall is almost flush with grade there, so it's not really high off the ground at that point.
So the height above grade for the wall and fence together is the 6 foot?
In essence, it might be 6'4" with a little bit of wall underneath it, so well underneath 8 feet.
If you could can you zoom in and see how you have it labeled there?
Yeah, sure.
So maybe if you'd say stone retaining wall at grade with 6 foot, would that be accurate?
Yeah, that would be accurate.
So I'll just revise that first note to say prior to the signing of the plan, sheet A001 shall be revised to indicate that the proposed stone retaining wall in the rear of the property is at grade and the fence I guess it'll just be is at grade since you already have the note about the height of the fence that'll stay.
Yeah, I mean, to be accurate, it's a little bit above grade, obviously, so I don't want it to be misunderstood that it's, it will stick up a little bit above that finished, that driveway line.
So maybe I'm gonna keep the note as is, and if you could just add that the height of the wall and fence is 6 plus or minus, or whatever that height is,
Sure, that's fine.
and I'll leave the condition as is.
Okay, that
And
sounds
that will constitute setting forth the height of the proposed stone retaining wall. I'll add wall/fence in the rear of the property.
That sounds
And just
great.
clarify that the height is for both
For wall and.
wall/fence, I guess, if it's a wall with then a fence on top of it, or.
Right. That sounds great.
Okay, so just to clarify the revisions, if the board was to approve the resolution as modified this evening, it would be with condition 1 change to read: prior to the signing of the plans, sheet A001 shall set forth the height of the proposed stone retaining wall/fence in the rear of the property, and then specific condition number 2 had been deleted because the lighting fixture label was on the specification. So you could entertain a motion to approve the resolution as modified this evening.
So indeed, that's what we'll do. I'd like to get a motion to approve the resolution with modifications that were made this evening.
So motion.
Second, please.
Aye.
All and Ashley, no, sorry. So we will have we'll have Autumn, our project coordinator, do a voice vote, please.
Rachel Legato.
Aye.
Thank you. Zach Bialecki,
Aye.
Rich Soto,
Aye.
Jared Johnson.
Aye.
Thank you.
So the motion is passed, and the resolution is approved. Thank you very much. We appreciate you taking time to be with us this evening.
Thanks for your time.
So now we are moving on to our next, which is PB 2008 6466 Plains Road Discovery Institute. You have appeared to us with us before. We've gone over a number of different aspects. I think everyone is familiar with the summary and what has been going on. The seeker is an unlisted action. We're going to do an uncoordinated review of seeker. Public hearings will be required. We can't do that until after seeker. So what we want to do then is, for our next steps, is we would like to explain the revisions. It appears that we do need to refer you to the ZBA for some area variances related to the various aspects of the concrete patio, fence, and retaining wall. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your revisions? We'll then take up a referral to the ZBA. We'll also have our attorney help us go through the issues, because there are some rather detailed issues that we want to make sure we get correct, before we get you a checklist that you can work off of so that we can continue to move this forward.
Do you mind identifying yourselves for the people attending as well?
My name is Ed Kramer. I'm from the board of the Discovery Institute.
I'm Anita Falcone, also on the board of the Discovery Institute.
Thank you.
Neil Collier, architect.
Okay, thank you. What do you got for us?
Is Patty going to be joining us?
Is she joining us?
Patty Brooks was on before.
Does not appear that
Yep, I'm still here.
there we go.
Patty Brooks, surveyor. You want to share your screen?
No,
You're calling in.
I am.
Okay. Well, we responded to the comments from Ashley with regard to May. Briefly, we clarified
as much as we could in the response letter regarding the private road maintenance agreement is a discrepancy between what was on the one that we submitted and the deed labor page that's noted on the plan. And similar to the sewer agreement, we couldn't really to give a meets and bounds description on the driveway, so we cross-hatched it on the plan. And we refer to that as part of this, we refer to the map, part of the easement. Likewise, with the shared sewer agreement, that can't really be defined with meets and bounds. So we'll add a note to the plan that refers to the site plan, subdivision plan that will show the sewage or sewage disposal system. And previously we noted that the sewer, shared sewer agreement was reviewed by the village attorney, the village engineer and DPW. They had no comments. Ulster County Health Department had no comments, no objections to its use. And it's currently being reviewed by the village attorney 3 months now. And I don't know how to, he said he was generally okay with it, but he was making edits to it.
And this is the easement?
This is the shared sewer
Shared
agreement.
Yeah.
Will Frank, the village.
Right. Autumn, can you just make a note, King, Will Frank, and see if we can get,
And if I could just make a comment on that, so typically when you have an easement or something like that, that's required, that's always gonna be, a condition of any ultimate approval, so it won't, it doesn't necessarily need to be signed off on before that time, so there's still, it's not gonna hold anything up, I guess is the point.
yeah.
Okay.
And I did have just one comment, myself on that easement. I know that you noted, I think in your comment letter about how you were going to describe the easement area. I would just ask you also include the map number and the date the map was filed with the county. That's going to be blank for now because it's going to be this subdivision map that's going to be filed in the future, but just for whenever you finalize that agreement, it's helpful to have that reference to the map date that you could now just put in a placeholder so that you'll be able to fill that in. So the record with the county is clear to anyone doing a search there.
Okay.
Okay, we revised the descriptions of the houses. I think you referred to them as homes, and so we kept the wording consistent, going for house number one, house 2 and 3, and the number of bedrooms in each house. Those notes were revised. And there's a number of sheds that Corey came out and looked at in notes 5, 6, 7, and 8. And Corey determined that they were pre-existing, non-conforming. The one note, one shed at the front of the lot was, the lot line was revised to be offset 12 feet. So as not to create a need for a variance. And in terms of the note 9, we opted to provide an easement for this encroachment because there is a retaining wall and a fence and a concrete slab that crosses the lot line. The new lot line crosses this, and the zoning zoning variance wouldn't obliterate these encroachments. We still need this easement, and so I don't think we need to go to the zoning board of appeal for a 0 lot line for a fence that's on crossing a lot line. It's,
But out of curiosity, why don't you just move the fence and the wall and?
it's a concrete retaining wall. That, you know, and so the agreement, the easement is to, similar to the shared septic. Each property owner is responsible for its upkeep, any repairs that have to be made. And, you know, this includes a slab on grade. So that's what the owner is willing to do. And it was suggested, from Patty Brooks, that we also include the, you know, the utilities easement as part of this maintenance, agreement, which was the last note, from National. Other changes were that the map notes were revised, and again, the easements will be included as part of this maintenance agreement. And we will add a note to the plan with respect to the easements between the properties that is referred to in her comment number 11.
So a recorded utility easement has not been found for the overhead electric. The only easements of record were found to New York Telephone Company. Wow. That's it's a while ago. Okay. All right. Ashley, do you want to kind of go through some of these issues and let's see what we can do. And then we're going to have to determine what specifically we're going to need to refer them to the ZBA, and it says for the area variance related to the concrete patio. Variances will be required whether these are remaining as encroachments or the lot lines redrawn. So you want to just kind of take us through those, please?
Sure. So I think the first, item for discussion is you had previously asked whether the lot lines can be withdrawn in some fashion to get rid of those encroachments. So I understand the retaining wall, a retaining wall that serves a purpose that can't be relocated. And then you said there's a fence there as well?
At the top of the retaining wall.
It's part of the retaining wall.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I guess the concrete patio, is there a way to redraw the lot lines so that because it's only a little bit on the one lot? I think you might have, I don't know if you did that to avoid the need for a variance for that.
No,
patio, I'd imagine you would need a variance. And I do think, which I hadn't thought previously, but I believe the retaining wall fence that's allowed to be in the setback. But the concrete patio, I would question whether that would need a variance, but on top of that, whether there's a way to avoid the need for that encroachment.
Yeah, I guess I can speak to that. The applicants had asked me to try to revise the lot line, and if I revise the lot line so that the patio is not encroaching, then we would need a side yard setback from the studio building on lot number 1. So I know that each town is a little bit different on how they interpret what is a structure and what isn't, but typically I had believed that a patio was not considered a structure and therefore a variance would not be needed. We certainly can consult with the building inspector, and if it's determined that we do need an area variance, I think that it would be less impactful overall to get an area variance for a patio than it would be for a structure, which potentially, if the walls fell or something happened, could create more of a problem than a patio encroachment.
Okay.
The previous suggestion to move the lot line was based on an error on a plan that showed that the concrete patio ended 3 feet from the new line. In fact, the concrete patio continues. So there's no one side to move it to.
Okay.
The line's still going to go across the slab. And like Betty says, it's not a structure.
Okay. Ashley, you want to keep on here?
So if you could just clarify that, because it doesn't.
Yeah.
When you say it continues, does it actually connect to what's labeled pad on the off the studio?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so that should be shown on the plan.
I think that was revised on the latest plan.
I'm looking at from June 30th. I don't know if there was a one.
Okay, there may be an error. I don't have my screen in front of me.
But if you can, yeah, just make that adjustment, and then I think need to consult with the building inspector as to whether a variance would be needed for that patio. All right, I think the issues were largely addressed. As far as the private road maintenance agreement, we would need to have the note reference both agreements. I think you said there was an original one and then there was an expanded one. So if you reference both of those in that map note 8 and provide copies of both, I think you provided copies of one, but not the other. The shared sewer agreement, as I noted, the proposed language that you had in your comment responses should also include a placeholder for now that's going to ultimately reference this subdivision map and the date this map was filed. In note number 14, the second sentence should be revised to say that lot 1 and 2 are subject to a septic easement and maintenance agreement being filed in the Ulster County Clerk's office. And then my other comments were about the encroachments and whether you were going to be modifying the lot lines. I think there was a question as to what the reasoning was behind those structures and whether it was there was a way to redraw the lot lines there. With map note number 16, I think I'm still a little confused as to what that is intending to say. You're talking about existing encroachments. It was my understanding that's talking about the existing encroachments on lot 16.210 and not the encroachments that you're seeking approval of as part of this subdivision. So you shouldn't be referring to the retaining wall or the fence that are encroachments on lot 1. That note should just refer to existing encroachments that have nothing to do with the subdivision. I think, though, the primary question is whether or not there's a variance needed for the patio, or whether the board feels strongly about, well, I guess there's no way to redraw that line if, and Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, if the patio actually connects to the structure on lot 1.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to go out and look at that and photograph it myself, and maybe even meet the building inspector out there to make sure we can clarify exactly what's considered the patio, and some of it is overgrown, and but yeah, I understand where you're going with that, Ashley. And can I just go back to the last note 16, the existing fence, wall, and patio encroachments shown on existing lot number 2. So that's the encroachments against lands of nice.
So the point of that note was to say there's already encroachments. If you look over, it's the right side of the plan on section SBL 86.41-1-16.210.
Yes.
That's not part of this property, but that looks like a fence that encroaches on what's going to be lot 1.
Okay, yes, I understand.
So yeah, there's a few fences that encroach over on lot 1. So the point was, I think originally I had asked for a note to be added indicating that that's an existing encroachment that's not being approved as part of this. So that note should only really refer to that, because the other encroachments you're asking for approval of, so those wouldn't be considered existing encroachments. Those are new encroachments that are going to require approval.
Okay, understood. I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
No, that's it's something that's difficult to explain, I think, in
yes.
written words.
Better in person.
Yes. And also, I think related to that, if there's going to be this shared, encroachment agreement, that there should also be a map note, saying that lots 1 and 2 are subject similar to saying that they're subject to a shared maintenance and easement for the shared septic, that they're also subject to a shared encroachment easement or maintenance agreement for the patio and other structures.
Also to be filed with the county clerk.
Yes,
Thank you.
sure. So I
Okay.
think it definitely made progress. I think the question is the applicant's consultant will get in touch with the building inspector, figure out what's going on, what that patio situation is, whether there's any variances needed, and then report back. And then the board, if a variance is needed, you refer them at that
So-
time, or
So we really don't need to refer them for any of the variances at this point.
I guess we don't know whether they need it. I mean, you can refer them in the event it's determined one's needed. That way they don't have to come back if you want to maybe do that.
Okay, yeah, that might be a good idea. So how do you word it on something that we don't have an exact?
Yeah, I mean, you could,
We could make a motion to refer the applicant to the ZBA pending
to the extent required for the concrete patio.
okay. Requiring an area variance. So that's the motion. Can I get a second on it, please?
Just make sure. Autumn, is that something you got?
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So you are referred to the ZBA based upon the need for that. We also probably need to make sure that you can reach out to Autumn sometime this week and she can provide you with the notes about what was discussed tonight, because I know that we went over some fairly technical information. And she can probably help you to list a a set of action steps that you have to take to continue forward so we can get this moving. What else we need to do tonight? That's really about it, right?
Yes, you had previously authorized me to prepare an EAF Part 2 for this, but because there was this question of whether or not there was going to be a need for a variance, I didn't, but
Okay,
I'll have that ready for the next time that
good,
they're ready to be before you.
good. So that way then we can move on to doing the seeker and hopefully we'll have all the issues resolved before we get through the seeker on that. And we'll just push forward. Any questions?
Yeah, so we're not applying to the ZBA, we're meeting with Corey to determine whether or not it needs to go to the ZBA.
Yes to both. Yes to one and yes to both. We have given you a provisional referral to the ZBA based upon an area variance which might be needed because of the encroachment of the patio, and that is a decision that Corey will have to weigh in on. So talk to Corey. If he says, yes, you need to go, you're already scheduled to go to the ZBA, and that won't hold you up and it'll continue on. However, if you meet with Corey and he says, no, you don't need it, you don't have to go to the ZBA. Make sense?
Yes.
Then calling the village attorney.
Autumn is going to make a note to Will Frank and have him speak with you and with Ashley so that we can keep that on the ball too.
Would the village attorney be reviewing the maintenance, encroachment maintenance agreement?
Ashley, do you think that is something the village attorney would do, the encroachments, correct?
I'll certainly review that, and I'm not sure that
Okay,
he would want to, but we could coordinate as well.
yeah, let's let Ashley look at it first before we move it on. That way we can perhaps expedite.
Yeah, I don't want to speak out of turn, but generally that is the purview of the planning board and the zoning board, and the town attorney generally does not get involved in that, but certainly everybody, every town's different, so every village.
Yeah, the sewer question was different because the requirement with to connect to public sewer and all of that. So that's why that one was being reviewed by the village attorney, but I agree that typically they wouldn't want to review the other.
Okay.
Great.
All right, so we are at a stopping point, and we all have our tasks. Thank you very much, and we'll see what the progress is, and if there's progress, then we'll see you at our next meeting.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks.
Thank you.
Okay, so that leads us to our final.
I guess,
Yes, I'm sorry.
is Pat still on or the applicant? If you could add to the plan, I just had a thought. I don't think it's on there now, but wherever this encroachment area, if you could kind of mark that on the plan as well, since you're having this easement agreement, so something could correspond to that.
Sure.
Similar how you did around the septic area, just some kind of way to demark it on the plan so that it's clear for the agreement.
Absolutely. And if I
Thank
have
you.
any questions about it, Ashley, may I reach out to you independently?
Sure.
So if I wanted to go and walk the property, just to kind of get a better look at it, whom do I need to speak with before I go?
You can. If you'd like.
Well, thank you. That.
You can speak with us. You
Just
can
to
do
kind of
it.
walk on there.
I would do that with you.
Yeah.
There should be a site plan, a site visit consent form filled out, but if for some reason there's not, then you could just have the applicant do that for the file so that you have that on
Yeah,
record before you go out.
We can get a site visit consent form so that everything is.
We have one.
You already have one done? Okay, good. All right. So if you would just send that information to Autumn, and we can then she'll relay that to us, and then we'll probably give you a call, and Zach might, and Ray come up with you as well, and just to kind of go out there at some point individually to just kind of take a look and see where things are kind of. It's easier to understand the plan.
It would help things a lot.
Yeah. So, okay.
Thanks.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Right.
Good night. David, have a seat.
Evening.
Yeah, you thought you were flying through.
Can you bring food? Sure.
Look at this is being a short one. 9:30. Okay. All right, so I don't get paid. So this is PB 2208-8793 North Chestnut Street. We are discussing the retail business not otherwise mentioned or dispensary for the proposed area that you have there. So basic history exempt from referral to Ulster County Planning Board as long as certain conditions are met. We're gonna have to get you a public hearing. But right now, we just kind of need to look at your extended narrative, and then we need to talk a little bit about the traffic proposal that you sent back. And we're going to urge you to become increasingly more specific. For instance, is it 2,000 or is it 4,000 square feet? So we just need to kind of narrow this down so that we can get more specific and move.
Yeah, we'd like you to approve us for up to 4,000 square feet.
Actually, you want to weigh on approval up to 4,000 square feet? I know that we could approve.
Yeah, I think the important thing for identifying the square footage is that it would be, the maximum. So you wouldn't want to, approve for a 2,000 square foot
Right.
of space, and then it ends up, wanting to be more, then that would need an amendment. So I think that would be
Just go for 4.
Yep.
be okay to do it in that fashion.
I just wanted to be transparent with you guys that there are two concerns. One wants 2,000, one wants 4,000. I just want, but
Well,
clearly what we're asking for.
if you have 4,000 and you only need 2, it's much easier than having 2 and needing 4.
Right, absolutely. 4,000.
Go big.
And Ashley, just for clarification, because I've not been involved in a decision or an applicant who is not presenting the sort of the specifics of the intended owner operator and some more of the specifics of the plan. I understand that the approvals of the retail space inherent in the zero place approval certainly provide for this this business, but can you just make sure we understand, like, beyond the semantics of what we're approving, or I at least understand what I'm approving, because then it would really help us zero in on what details we need and what we're speaking about and saying yes to.
So you're going to be approving for this specific use, this retail business not otherwise mentioned, and it's a recreation marijuana dispensary. So that would be the use, and it would really be whatever parameters, are going to be set by your approval. It would be, they're seeking up to 4,000 square feet. So that's one thing that you'd have to consider. If there's other issues that are tied to your approval, I mean, parking, for example, will consider it as a 4,000 square foot space rather than on the lower end. So you would be approving it as if it's going to be at that max, and it's approving, for the use. There might be other conditions that you impose, and depending on the applicant or the ultimate tenant that may want to change some of those, then they would have to return. So it's to be as specific, as the applicant here intends the use to be. That way they don't need to return to change that at all. So it's really incumbent on them as far as how they're going to be defining that use, but then the tenant will have to comply with whatever restrictions or parameters are set by the applicant or by yourself through conditions.
And then inherent in the application, any questions related to fit out or signage would all just be already approved details as a result of the zero place approval?
So the signage, I believe there's a sign plan that has certain size requirements, coloring requirements, that it would have to comply with those. If any of that were to be changed, of course, then that would be subject to an amended approval or reapproval. And as far as any of the fit outs, the internal parts of the building, that would be subject to the building department review in connection with building code requirements and all of that.
Right. So we're not being asked to review or approve any of those details at this time, but ultimately those details will get reviewed and approved?
So the building department always has to approve floor plans and things like that, though typically they are submitted. I believe they are even required under the code to be submitted to you. That way you can see a general idea of the interior. So it's ultimately, as far as a compliance with building code question, that's for the building department, but you do see the floor plan so that you could understand how that works and things like access and all of that, how that might impact elements of the site plan type issues.
And we provided a conceptual drawing, so you have some sense of, right, and the hyper detailed thing we're assuming can be handled by the building department, right? Once the actual sample review shows up and really nails down those kinds of details.
Okay.
Thanks, Ashley.
All right. So your extended narrative.
Yep. Keith is also on it. You can see the regions we do. So.
You didn't. Oh, Keith. All right. So I'm trying to find the narrative. There we are. So take us through this. Estimating. I see your introduction, which I read, and then estimating initial traffic related to the new dispensary. There's multiple dispensaries, work with your consultant.
I'm happy to give you the next.
Sure.
So, we first went back to say, can we get even more specificity on estimating the sizes, right? And we learned from talking to a lot of people as we described here, that the overwhelming factor is what is the order of dispensary. If we're the first to open in your state, it's going to be quite a surge. If we're the last to open, you can hardly notice the difference between this and any other use, right? We have no idea where we're going to fall. So we don't know if we're going to be among the initial 100 or 200 so-called justice involved dispensaries, or if we're going to be a part of the cohort of recreational use licenses that follow a couple months after those justice involved. Right. So because no one has a crystal ball, I think the best way to handle this is to just move to how do we handle the surge, whatever this. We approached our traffic consultant, Bill Greeley, who worked closely with us throughout zero place time, We also spoke to informally to folks on the cannabis control board, and we spoke to the village board, Tim and so forth. And, he suggested, hey, why don't you submit a traffic management plan to both the village board and the planning board next week, right? So the plan consists of a few elements. One is for this surge period, not just opening the dispensary to anyone who can walk in, rather having only to schedule by appointment only folks. And use a website, establish a website that the dispensary operates to schedule. And this has been proven in many states to date, and is Bill Greeley's recommended approach to controlling this. I had not heard that until I talked to them, and speaking to some of the other dispensaries, I've heard the same thing, that's been a proven approach. So the elements would be scheduled appointments for that period of time. If there, for some reason, is like lots of drive-by traffic, or people are still coming, even though we're not allowing them in, right? We want to be able to handle that. We will have someone posted outside that will direct that traffic to nearby lots, such as Memorial Pool, with requested from the village that we, if this occurs during the winter period, that we can plow that lot during this period, just so that there's no threat of any kind of impact, to the nearby community. That's the net of it. I mean, there's more details on in the plan, but that's really the essence of it. You brought up a number of other concerns: odor, security, waste disposal, and I kind of walked you through those. I learned a lot.
Let's go through the traffic management here first. So in-store transactions, approximately 15 to 20 minutes. Transaction time for existing customers 5 to 8. Overflow parking, and you're planning on doing the overflow parking at Moriello, and people are just going to walk from Moriello.
Yeah.
Down.
Yep. Okay. It's very close.
Okay. Have you reminded, is there an existing easement or agreement from Zero Place Days, from the Zero Place approval with the use of Moriello, or would that be something we'd have to work out?
It's a public lot. As long as the village is fine with it, I don't think it's an easy issue, but Ashley would comment on that.
Okay.
Right. It would simply
I think-
and walk along more.
Yeah, no, I understand what you would do. I'm just
Yeah.
making sure we don't need an agreement to
Right.
be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think it's different than your typical public parking lot that's available, there's various municipal public lots throughout the village, and I don't know the answer to this, but this is really tied to the pool use. Is that the Moriello Pool, Moriello Park, is that where the lot
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that would depend upon the time of year that you actually open. If it's in the summertime, then there may be some difficulties we'll have to work out.
That's right.
Some form of
And
agreement, but if it's in the winter time.
Yeah, we do not anticipate this should all be, the goal of the state is to open the justice involved dispensaries before the end of the year. And the recreational ones are, they're trying to hit it late fall. It may trickle into winter. But they're trying to get these things going. And so, we would be fine to constrain this to outside of the summer period. Or talk about it for some reason and trickle into the summer period, how we can manage that.
All right.
and that's something definitely you'd want, the village board's feedback on and ultimate, approval. I don't know if you have any initial thoughts to give the village board on that.
This is a contingency on a contingency, right? So initially, to prevent a surge, we would go by appointment only. So the welcome walk-ins are static parking approval and parking plan, handles retail for all of that space. So, under normal load, it shouldn't be an issue. If it becomes an issue, we're going to go by appointment only till it's not an issue. If for some reason, we need a contingency plan for a day, a week, the preliminary discussions is we would direct them to other public parking or the Moriello Pool.
Yeah.
They're not welcome to go there without an appointment we shouldn't be overrun by individuals there, if that's, if that's a concern of the board.
We're
You asked for a contingency plan, so that's the contingency plan.
Yeah, I appreciate that it's a contingency on a contingency, but if we want to consider it, then we want to just make sure it's buttoned up.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I don't disagree. And I think the time you open isn't the time when the pool would be used. So I think, our preliminary discussion with the trustees was that obviously it's this board's purview. They were amenable to the idea.
And they discussed, I watched the village board proceeding last week and
I'm sorry, David. Maybe we should start with Zach and Rachel in comments just to make sure. Sorry, David, please.
Yeah, obviously we want the village board to weigh in. They did receive that letter and discussed it. When was that, last week? And they raised no concerns. They haven't formally approved anything, so they're waiting on you guys, but they certainly didn't object to the idea.
Okay, Rachel, you and Zach, we haven't included you in the conversation. What do you have you'd like to ask? Anything related to traffic?
Yes. Well, what about the old Stewart's across the street? Nobody's using that part.
Well,
Maybe-
that's private property. We don't own
That
it.
actually has been sold, so it's going to be undergoing some revision work over there. But good idea.
Yeah, I'll just say that I think that, I'd like to have our traffic engineer look at this plan, but having it by appointment only initially goes a long way to, assuaging my concerns.
You talked about having personnel for directing traffic. Of course, one of the chief considerations in the traffic is keeping people from going into the neighborhood that's going to be sitting behind you. And I'm hoping that will be part of the action plan to just keep people out of there. Otherwise, it could be a big mess.
Yeah, they would be directing to public areas, not down on Large Street.
Okay.
Can't you make
It's also not an inviting. You stand there. It's not a naturally inviting direction because there's no on-street parking there other than our handicap.
Some people may not know that. So I'm sorry, Rachel, go ahead.
Well, if you think it's only going to take people 20 minutes, why not limit the parking to 20 minutes? Like have a few spaces that are just this parking's for 20 minutes.
Oh, they will. The people, let's be very clear here. Those who have an appointment will park in the zero place parking lot. We have adequate parking to address this use. What we're talking about here is the only situation I can even imagine is people start coming when they don't have an appointment. We have to tell them when they approach the person standing outside, they say, do you have an appointment? No, you're not authorized to be here. If they say, well, I want to be here anyway, then you can say, well, you can go park in a public place. Right?
Well, there's a scenario where they might say, well, I'm going to go to my car, jump on my phone, make the appointment and wait for my time to come in.
Yeah.
So that could create a little bit of backlog, I mean, that's a reasonable approach because it's following the rules, but it's also, using a spot. So we just want to try to think about a couple layers. I'm not trying to imagine scenarios. I'm thinking about, reality of common sense of it all. I think, so I'm going to make sure Rachel and Zach have said.
Anything else related to some of the traffic, Rachel or Zach? Okay.
No, I don't think so.
So
I
we
just
have
want to comment down on the parking because I think they said that there's adequate parking for the use. I think it'd be helpful if there was a calculation showing what parking is required for this use and also in conjunction with what's already there in terms of existing residential requirements and also the businesses that are starting to come in, just to have that kind of analysis.
Yeah,
or some type of bulk table showing that.
Yeah.
Yes, we provided this at the previous meeting. And there is no difference between the 4,000 use and the 2,000 use because the 4,000 use eats into other uses that have the same retail demand that we model. So the exact same distribution of parking requirements in our special use calculator, which you guys reviewed when we discussed ad nauseum for 2 years, right? That we submitted that special use calculator that lays this out in more detail.
Yeah, I've seen that,
Yeah.
and I think it's well thought out. One question is, and the thing is an Excel sheet, so it's manipulatable, if that's a word. It'd be really interesting to see it just with this like 3 people an hour or 3 people appointments model, because it might even be lower than what's projected in the current model. So you know, and it would just be, here's this scenario, here's the typical retail scenario that the calculator was provided to do if it were just a retail business, but we kind of think that's actually not the scenario because we're doing this workaround. So it would be interesting to just plug in the assumptions of this by appointment only model and see what that tells us.
Okay.
You get what
And
I'm
also,
saying?
I think the calculator is based on different times of day and different types of uses. I was speaking more to, you know, what would be required under the code, strictly just under the code guidelines for the uses that are existing and proposed. Understanding that you have come up with this mechanism through the calculator, but also just to see what that, you know, overall calculation would be, just to get an idea.
This whole thing was derived based on the code. If you recall, the whole concept was we have shared mixed use shared parking. And so the straight up calculation of this many square footage for this use, it doesn't apply. We went through this extensively and had Corey review it and everything so that you understand that this is, you can't take each use in isolation that's written in code and apply it to this. It doesn't work. That's the whole point of the approach that we took and went through and discussed at length with you. So, I mean, we can dig up all that analysis and relitigate it with the board if you guys want to, but
It's not a reason to, all that's being asked is like, we have a tool that helps us project this. My suggestion would be to use the assumptions you're proposing and show us a scenario of that. And I could probably figure out how to do it myself, but I think you'd be better equipped.
Sure. That's fair. Sure. I think it'll actually be better than what's on the model.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It'd probably be more.
Yeah.
So then I have a question, may I, John?
Sure.
So I have a question about, I think I think the idea of the by appointment only is a really good place to go for this period where there's the possibility of great demand. Although we don't even know if that's the case yet, because we don't know where this approval might fall in the overall, you know, context of all the approvals. Then I think the memo suggests that maybe this would shift and go away, and it would be a regular use retail, you know, regular access retail establishment at some point. Do you have any sense of what we would want to discuss as like triggering that shift away from the appointment to that? Because I feel like we would want to codify that if that's part of the
What do you
agreement.
mean, as in terms of time, how many months do you think it would take before that?
Right, months or measures of traffic or measures of usage or customer base.
Yeah, I think it's when we see, when we see the appointments, the demand by appointments fall to a certain level where they're no longer filling up the appointments, right? And where we can judge that the parking that is available is fully adequate for the demand we're seeing. I mean, I think that's the trigger, right? If you're looking for a specific quantitative measure, we have to figure out what that looks like. You know, maybe it's, you know, 2 consecutive days where the appointments at the peak hours are not, I don't know, right? But I think I think it's going to be something that's pretty obvious when it appears, you know.
But I'm guessing that it would be, and actually correct me if I'm wrong, it would probably have to be a specific condition of the resolution that, you know, how long this lasts and or under what conditions does it go away?
Yeah, exactly. I think that what different, I guess, phases of the plan, you could call it phases of the opening plan, what would trigger you to go into that next phase to no longer require the appointment only.
Right.
Yeah, so I think phasing it might be a more appropriate way to do it, as opposed to saying very hard, fast, at this point is done, and we'll move on.
When you
So,
say phasing, what do you mean?
so
By time?
probably by traffic count, but.
Yeah, I don't know what that qualitative measure would be,
Calling and
but whether it's by some type of mechanism to determine when when you can make that switch to the next part of your plan and no longer require the on-site. And it might be,
Appointment
I'm not sure
volume.
how best to measure that, but that's something
Yeah,
that.
sorry, Zach, what was that?
I mean, David suggested just appointment volume.
Yeah.
When aren't appointments all filling up, then you know that there's less demand than.
Yeah, I mean, I think Zach is right. I think what occurs to me is you say, very quickly, we're going to understand what our peak hours are, right? Because the demand for appointments will fill up on those peak hours. So we can say that at those peak hours, I'm just thinking off the cuff for the moment, just to flesh this out a little bit, that at those peak hours, once we reach a point where those are no longer filling up, right? We now can say we're below the 3 simultaneous visitors per time slot. So we clearly have enough parking supply to meet and so, you know, let's say there's 3 consecutive days where those peak hours are falling below those appointment slots or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm guessing 420 is going to be your peak hour.
Yeah, peak day, 420 on 420.
Sorry,
Right.
planning board joke. You know,
Yeah.
it's 10 o'clock. I guess we're allowed a planning board joke.
Yeah.
I think it's easy enough to look at what we base the model on for that amount of footage, and we just say, you know, when the volume falls within the approved model, then you lift the appointment only requirement. Because the issue isn't how many people there, it's do we have the parking to accommodate who shows up?
Right.
And that's, you know, we want as many people there producing sales tax revenue for the village as well as for the business as the parking allows for, and not more. So that's, I think that's an easy figure to come up with based on the model that we've developed. And we just quantify that for you. So you have that in written form at the next meeting. So if you were to approve something here, you'd have a simple formula to read into an approval that says, hey, when the total traffic count of appointments reaches X, you can do Y. Yeah. Until then, it's got to be by appointment only.
Yeah.
Is it possible, just to show you guys, just for giggles, is there a way for me to project anyone in the meeting?
We lose the screen if we do that. You can send it to me if you can.
Okay.
Yeah, send it to me on the screen share.
Cool.
You can send over the.
So actually, if you can open up, do you have the American? No.
What, the special use calculator?
Yeah, because I wanted to show you the addition.
Yeah.
I wanted to show you what 4,000 square feet, it actually turns out.
A lot
by dedicating so much square footage to one use.
Yeah.
You actually are better.
Yeah, it's a lot of parking.
Because because you're not, the model actually overshoots what I'm telling you.
I understand that.
It scales up linearly, but the reality is just because you have more square footage doesn't mean that you double your customer.
Yeah.
Right.
But I wanted to show you that how much parking the model allocates for this use of 4,000 square feet.
Yeah.
At the middle of the day, we're talking 12 spaces dedicated to this at all hours.
Yeah.
I mean, at peak time.
Yeah.
Right. So, and we're limiting it to 3.
Yeah.
So this model is way covered.
Yes.
Anyway, let me.
I do.
Sorry, I don't have access on this machine. It would have to go to.
Yeah. I actually would ask, maybe we don't bring it up, but I forget what is being said and shared.
Yeah.
The question I would have around that is if we approve it at this maximum 4,000, and then the decision is made that the site would be smaller. Well, I guess it's allocated anyway. So whatever the new place that took up the other 1,500 feet would take into, okay.
Yeah, and the model is
Just thinking it through.
And the model, just to be clear, the model I submitted is with every square foot of our commercial space filled.
Yeah.
It's with the various uses we've been discussing, including second nature, which you've approved, fitness center, et cetera. So it's full. This is not in isolation. This is a holistic model.
Yeah.
sorry, I have little PTSD when it comes to parking issues, so I get triggered easily.
I think we understand what the board's asking us to provide for them, because we certainly don't want to create an approval that, you know, creates this traffic issue. So I think we can provide some language based on the model that everybody's worked on that would help facilitate that.
Well, it's the, traffic is certainly one of the greater concerns, and we still have not, Carlito's not gotten back with us on the information he has. So once we have that, what's the Carlito hold of,
PDE.
PD Provident, who's our traffic engineer. I guess once we get that information back, perhaps we can have them sit in on a meeting, kind of get a better, more realistic picture between people who understand that, can hopefully interpret it to us that don't completely understand.
And I will send I'll do some work to really just explain this model in depth for him and for you guys, and to show that it's already covering more than covering this surge period.
Okay. And so we've also talked about parking, product deliveries. So I think in a general sense that you've done a good job to get the general concept of what we're going to try to accomplish. Now, hopefully we'll be able to refine it as time goes on. It's new for everybody. We have no idea. So
One question on the other idea of delivery, would the business also provide delivery, product delivery, meaning delivery to customers?
Yes.
And that would.
They could, it's not, they're not required.
Right.
Yes.
So, I guess that just thinking, and I'm thinking out loud in the context of this meeting.
Yeah.
Thinking about the number of vehicles that might come and go in order to provide that delivery. Is it that will at some point like DoorDash and those folks be making deliveries of this sort? Just trying to figure out what that would look like.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a way to.
I mean, in some ways, deliveries actually offset parking needs because people are not coming to it, but we don't know.
Okay, but if the business is wildly successful, if the business is wildly successful and there were a few delivery people happening all at once, parking, getting their product, coming back to the car, making delivery, just try to figure out a plus or minus to figure that in, if it's a part of the business model.
So I asked that with one of the users. In other states, they have a service called We Now. I kid you not, and it's an electric vehicle. So we have charging stations for this one vehicle, and it basically, you can order online and get delivery from that vehicle. There's very specific regulatory requirements for that. So it's not like a DoorDash item. It's not like you can just have a service do it. It's just a dedicated vehicle that does, in the medical marijuana, it just for those people who can't get out or can't get to the store, it provides a service. In recreational states, some states allow it, some states do not. New York has not defined what they're allowing that with that particular aspect of it fully, but I asked him, is this like multiple vehicles? He said, no, it's just one vehicle per location. I mean, that's if they have one.
And our understanding is that the demand, the traffic and parking demand of that vehicle is offset by the fact that you are not bringing that, but just like you're not bringing the 10%. So it's a net zero effect.
Yeah, but if we fixed the number of appointments and that's full, then it's actually in addition to.
Are you talking about during the surge period?
Yeah. Talking about and it might be a modest implication for the model that you're going to come back with, but to say like, hey, we might have two vehicles making deliveries, or one. Here's how they would come and go, and that would account for one more consideration. Just trying to kind of come at this from every place.
You'll see that the model is covered that.
Okay, let's move on here. Let's discuss a little bit about odor. Ashley, do you have anything you want to add to that, or Rachel, Zach, anything before we move forward? No,
No, that was good.
yeah,
Yeah, it's fine.
door stash, I like
And
it.
that was my father who went to Hydro with me, by the way.
All right. Nice place.
There you go. All right, so a little bit about odor, anticipating no odor concerns for 3 reasons. You want to walk us through those real quick?
Yeah, so it's as simple as all products must be in a, as I quoted from the regulation, a resealable child resistant package. It's not loose marijuana.
So
And-
will there be any loose?
No, I don't know if they're allowed to like allow a bag to open or something, but they do not retain it. I can't say that with certainty that there's never ever explode marijuana, but it is stored, it is transferred, it is moved in a resealable child resistant package. It is not stored in the open, it is not displayed in the open.
So in this particular building, because the Leeds Platinum building has a slight negative air pressure in all the areas, mechanically ventilated through an ERV. So it's going to be HEPA filtered air that comes into the building. And there's, that in of itself, I mean, if you stop over to Zero Place, you'll notice the air quality when you walk in.
We can safely say that we have the best air handling system in all of the buildings, without question.
Oh, it's
Yes.
building in Kansas.
Yeah. So that's the second reason. And then the third is, of course, there is no combustion there's no smoke in or anywhere near Zero Place.
Yeah.
And of course, the law is also not settled. And I verified this. I encourage you to go to some of these dispensaries yourself in neighboring states. I had never really done that before, and I really got a full whip of it myself.
Yeah. Well, I'll share, and I shared this with a member of the board, that one of the reasons why we're being thoughtful about this initial potential for the surge is because if you go to a dispensary in New Jersey now, in New Jersey, the dispensaries, the only ones open for recreational marijuana are those that were medical and are now being permitted to sell recreational until more licenses are distributed. And this was my experience literally visiting a New Jersey dispensary, which was that there was a parking lot of at least 30 cars full. There was street parking that was also unavailable, full. And there was a person that was presenting for traffic management who was offering a valet, and the valet would get in your car and drive it around until you were done shopping. And because there were no places to even put a car by the valet. So I'm not, at all being unreasonable and thinking like, we really got to think about this because the demand is great at the outset of the release of licenses. And while this building is very well designed for the parking needs of a typical retail establishment, this could look more like Black Friday if unregulated.
Yeah.
No, I went to stop at one in New Jersey and they wouldn't let me because I didn't have an appointment. I tried to go to one. They had a portable sign up by appointment only, no walk-ins. So I tried to park. And actually, someone came up to me and said, "I'm sorry, you gave an appointment." I'm like, "No."
Yeah,
So I assume the one you visited did not have an appointment.
No.
And we're not trying to pick everything apart. We want this to be successful. It's just
I
totally
get it.
uncharted territory.
I don't take offense to your concern.
So security, I see there, and that all makes quite a bit of sense. Just out of curiosity, do you have to have bonded delivery of product, like you have bonded delivery of liquor? Someone that has, they're a bonded warehouse, they have specific types of vehicles that do delivery, things of that nature. Just out of curiosity, I don't know.
Yeah, I have to, honestly, the security regulations around this are really long and I haven't memorized them, so I don't know. I have to think that whatever New York State is deciding and regulating this industry, it's going to be at a level that's suitable for municipalities, I don't know.
I actually asked that question. As of right now, yes, the regulations are not complete for the recreational marijuana, but for the medical marijuana, the answer is yes.
Interesting. Secure waste,
Yes,
coverable beyond recommendation.
Yeah, so the law is really clear about how it must be disposed. It has to be placed into a way that's unrecoverable. That has meant that when composting, at least 50% of the matter of the composting must be must be other organic materials. So they have clear guidelines on how to do that. Most places choose not to even consider doing any of that on site. It's just not there.
Yeah.
They don't have the time. They usually hire a disposal, outfit that does this for a living. It collects it and disposes of it appropriately. So there wouldn't be any dumpster diving issues and stuff.
Of course, there will be public comment, but, and it may or may not be an element of our concern, maybe Ashley can advise us, but has there been any information shared about this potential use of the retail space with your tenants in the building?
I don't know, to be honest. Keith, have you heard about any communication with our tenants on that?
Some of them are aware who watch these meetings and participate, others are not. We've gotten no negative feedback or concerns to management as of now.
I know that when I've given recent tours of the building, which have included our residents and other members of the community, as I walk through the commercial space, I tell them that we have dispensaries that are interested in this space.
Yeah.
And I ask some questions and no one has raised any issues to me directly.
Yeah.
To be honest, when Keith there first approached me about this use, I was kind of reluctant because I was an Air Force officer. I come from a very anti-drug sort of background and so forth. Now that I've visited so many dispensaries, I realize this is something, it's so normalized to me. It's really changed my feeling about what a use like this is. Anyway.
All right, so, sorry, go ahead.
All the residents want to wine and tap this bar on the patio side. That's the only thing they comment on.
Okay, so really, and actually, correct me if I'm wrong, the next steps, we've kind of gone through your extended narrative, and we'll start to add a little more body to those bones there as time goes on. Our traffic consultant should review the parking calculator analysis and recent traffic submission from Dr. Greeley, and we need to get a review back from him, asking that you should calculate total number of spaces that be required under the village code off-street requirements or residential guidelines for non-residential uses, so the board can understand the types of reductions being sought based on the applicant's calculator, which is something I think we went over in part today, but we did provide that calculator, so it'll give us something to study.
And I'll update the calculator with two things I've heard. One, the 4,000 square foot, which was the original one, was the 2020. I'll update with the 4,000. I'll also indicate in there, to Rich's point, make it explicit how it addresses this appointment period thing, which is a known, right? We're saying no more than 2 visitors at a given time, so we can show how that is accounted for in the model.
Yeah. And is there any way to account for this other factor there, which is that people might arrive, realize it's by appointment only, sit in their car, make their appointment, wait and come in? I think that's a very real approach.
I mean, what we can show you is the additional amount of parking that's
still available
to show you.
That would be helpful.
We can't handle.
Let's just flag that, because that would account. Okay, so 10 people could make this decision to sit in their car and wait, and it would still not be full. That would be the conclusion.
Well, I would imagine that 10 people could sit in their car and try to make appointments. If the appointments that are immediate would already be taken, and they're going to have to make appointments for 4:30 in the afternoon while they're sitting there at 10 a.m.
We want to wait all day.
I think that we may run more into that just from demand.
Yeah, the only time where I see that scenario really having impact is if there is availability, right? Like, okay, I see there's an appointment ready in 2 hours, I want to drive back to Uber.
Oh, wait.
Right.
But if it's full all day.
Yeah.
they're not-
Yeah.
And I would imagine that after a week or so, people are going to become accustomed to needing to do that. And so there will not be maybe that intense urge to drive up to the door. Try to make an appointment.
That's right.
So let's move on here. Proposed parking must comply with specific condition number 13 in your zero place resolution of approval. Provided, and then you know what this is. This is the number of approved off-street parking spaces shall control the number and types of businesses allowed in the building. No non-residential uses shall be allowed unless the parking requirements applicable to each such individual use and all such collective uses are met. Prior to
So I
this-
think we touched on that
Did we?
last time as far as that requirement. I think they're aware of that. I really think the next step is for, it's been sent to your traffic engineer, I believe. So it will be to hear from them. And then I think it would be a good idea for Carlito to attend a meeting. And then also if the applicant's traffic engineer can also
Okay.
attend, that way, if there's any kind of back and forth questions they have to one another, that can
Sure.
be accomplished, at a meeting rather than having to do some back and forth there.
Can I suggest maybe Autumn could help us coordinate this, that the model with the particular assumption of what we're being asked to approve during the surge phase, that be provided to the traffic engineer so that he or they are not looking at something that
Right.
isn't actually the thing that we're being asked to approve. So the sooner you can produce that, David, the better, because then that could get over to that person and that could be their consideration. And I do like the idea, Ashley, of maybe we can get a dialogue, even if they're on
Yeah,
Zoom.
I think when we get down to the further negotiations, it's going to be critical to have both of them here. And we need to get them as much data as we can, as quick as we can, so we can kind of push forward on this.
I'll have that built and reviewed and approved by Phil this week.
Okay.
to Your folks. So that-
Okay. So we can get that to him next week, and then we'll have to see what he can do to get his studies done and when he might be able to attend, so that we can have the two of them together.
Mr. Chairman, do you mind if we allow the two engineers to communicate outside of the meeting?
I couldn't understand what it said.
Could we have our engineers speak with your engineer?
Oh,
outside
yeah,
the meeting?
absolutely. I think that would be fine. I think it's
Preferred.
kind of necessary.
Preferred or necessary.
What is the name of your engineer? Again, Paltz?
Carlito Holtz,
Carlito Holtz with
Providence.
Providence.
Yeah, is it Provident EG?
PDE.
PDE, thank you.
Holtz, Holt.
Correct.
Great. That's a good idea.
Yeah. I think- What's that?
No.
Okay. So, yeah, let's get those two guys together and, see if we can get some things going, so. I think that's really kind of where we are at the moment. As soon as we can get that, we can push forward.
Okay.
Actually, anything we need, really can't at the moment, because we just need to get this, information and get things settled. I think probably after we get them together, then we'll be able to set the public hearing and move pretty rapidly after that. But we just need to get that to them. Actually, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think it's, appropriate to have the feedback from your traffic engineer, and if anything needs to be changed, that way there's a concrete plan that's
Yeah,
acceptable, and then able to be commented on by the public rather than having to change things later on.
Yeah.
right.
Sure. That's great.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thanks, gang. I appreciate it. So, do we have any other public comments that have come in? On,
Nothing used to bring.
okay. All right, so, I guess the last piece of business is we need a motion to close, to adjourn.
John, I'm not sure we ever approved the minutes from last meeting.
We didn't. Is Rachel still here?
Yeah.
Rachel, there you are. Hey, okay, you're right. So we did not approve minutes. Thank you, Zach. I appreciate the reminder. So we need to look at approving the minutes from the 7/19/2022 meeting. So I need to use a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
And a second,
Second,
all in favor?
aye.
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 So with that, then we need to get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much. Good night.
Good night.
Should I log off here?
Yeah.